And welcome everybody to another episode of the Monitor Keeping Podcast. I'm Alan Stevens. I'm here with Kai. Again, we're going to get into some other monitors we haven't quite touched on yet. So first things first, I want to say thank you again to the Morelia Python Radio Network, Eric and Owen, for starting this whole thing, getting us going, being a source of information and help. And to all of you that are unfamiliar maybe, and you're just coming to find out about monitors, go on to the Morelia Python Radio.com website. Check out what they have. These guys have been doing it for quite a while now. There's a few different podcasts on there covering all things reptiles. So just to touch on those, because I don't think I've actually sat down and read them out before, but you have Morelia Python Radio. Check out their podcast. That's Eric and Owen. You have Herp History with Eric and Owen also. You have Carpet Cliff Notes, Eric and Owen. Colibrid Corner, which is Owen and Riley. Now, Riley has another one, Carpets and Coffee, with his co-host Lucas. And I'll keep going. Student of the Serpent with Eric Burke and Rob Stone. As I mentioned, Carpets and Coffee was Riley, Lucas Lee. Eric also is in there. The Herping Podcast with Eric Burke and Nipper Reed. Our podcast, and Humans of Herpetoculture with Lucas Lee. The Australian Herpetoculture Podcast. Get all those words out of my mouth. With Luke and Jason, and then the Reptile Fight Club with Justin Julander and Chuck Poland. And I've been listening to some of those, and they're cracking me up. I find myself, I don't know if you guys have listened to them, but I'm taking one side of the argument and saying my my feelings to whatever I'm listening through, whether it's an ear pod or a speaker or whatever. So I'm having fun with that one. But all right, let's get started. How you guys doing?
Yeah, not too bad, man. Today we're bringing on a friend of mine. His name's Codey Kopp. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. And his bringing him on today is basically just really kind of going over his whole project with Varanus prasinus, or the green tree monitor, or tree monitors in general. And so I believe that most and many people, even myself and all the gentlemen here tonight, we love tree monitors. The look, the colors, it's the fascination. I mean, they basically are extremely delicate, really elegant looking, and I think there's a crazy appreciation for them. And a lot of beginners happen to buy into getting a tree monitor at the very beginning, whether it's meant for them or not. And so with this podcast, we're hoping to be able to reach just the people that are getting into it, and also on the breeder aspect as well, just because Codey himself has recently, and congratulations by the way, has recently hatched out some tree monitors. And so we'll get into all that juicy stuff in just here in a minute. But as far as our real I guess our real goal for this episode tonight is to really try to get to any of the beginners, especially the ones that are just trying to learn, get an idea on what your caging is like, understand dense humidity rather than a wet enclosure, just things like that, where we'll cover as much as we can. And if you feel like you're a monitor keeper, a tree monitor keeper, and we didn't cover anything, feel free to message any of us, even Codey himself, and we'll be able to help you out, or we can answer whatever you happen to need on this podcast. With talking about a lot of the tree monitors or any of the monitors in general, we can go on for days. So, really to really cut it down, we're going to try to focus on a few aspects of just care and raising them, things like that. And then we can get into how, Codey has actually produced them and getting into his projects now. So, welcome, man. I really appreciate you for coming on. And I know we're a little bit backed up and stuff like that, just catching up with life. So I'm glad you're able to come on just whenever we need.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Now, as far as your vol, are we able to hear each other? Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can
I
hear
think
you.
your
Okay,
boom
cool.
was down a little bit, so I can hear you better now.
Okay, cool.
All right, awesome, man. So yeah, man, I know I've kind of lived the tree monitor experience with you. I myself am notorious for not really raising them right, and just my experience alone with them in 2002, 2003. So that's many years ago, and I was a teenager then. These people that I was working for at the time bought some tree monitors that came in. They were the blue tree monitors at the time, and they were quite expensive, but still very rare. And we had a bunch of them, and I happened to lose and kill a bunch of them. So, I don't really. I learned my lesson when I was really young. I mean, I really was in charge of the monitors, and so the blue trees just happened to land in my lap. I mean, I'm just a kid, so what do I really know? I kept them in like 2x2s and 2x3s and stuff like that when they really deserved like an 8-foot enclosure.
Right.
I ended up bringing them even home to myself, the ones that were fit enough or things like that, where I thought they were not on death's door, and I tried to save those, but still I ended up failing miserably with them, just diet wise, not understanding them, thinking I knew what I was doing, but in reality, I wasn't. So just my experience with tree monitors alone, I have some right now, just raising up a young blue tree monitor that is a little gremlin. I actually don't even really see him compared to all my other monitors, just because they're known to be pretty shy. Even the captive bred ones, they kind of have to get out of this mm, baby stage.
Mhm.
So yeah. Well, what about you, Alan? You have tree monitors now, right?
Yeah, I got 3 blue trees. Now, from the look
Nice.
of it, they are all female. So,
Oh, really?
Good
yeah.
odds. Good odds.
Well,
Need to
they
part with
actually
one. Let me know.
I can't. They're actually not mine. So,
Oh.
they're a friend of mine. He's a big python breeder, and so he got into them when they were talking about closing Indo down and shutting down basically the importation of that species. So he jumped on a trio of them, and just the way things worked out, he ended up coming down here with another guy, and we met, got to know each other, did a little road cruising for whatever we could find, and kept chatting back and forth. And then he ended up sending them over to me. And so, being very honest, I think they're a little more fragile. He had them feeding; they were doing fine with him, and then it's taken from the time he got them over here. I want to say it's been almost 9 months or so,
Wow.
and they are just finally like really coming around to being out, feeding on more items. At the beginning, they would only touch some of Kai's hoppers and some roaches, and only dubious. They didn't want any of the other roaches I had.
It's
They
weird.
can be really picky.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
this is a
so they,
problem that many of them deal with. Many people deal with.
Hmm.
yeah, it was crazy. And so they've now taken some quail eggs, or at least one of them. And as of yesterday, one of them actually took a frozen thawed mouse. So
Nice.
I let some hopper size mice go in there in the enclosure, and they would eat those, but I don't know which ones exactly. So I'm see all of them out now more regularly. They don't run when I'm in or about their cage too much. So it's taken quite a bit of time to get them used to me and get them feeding regularly. So, but
Mm.
that being said, I got to do it all again I got to add a male in somehow,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I
then I
mean,
got to, what if they don't like them? What if he doesn't like them? Stir up the whole dynamic. So,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
like
really.
you're once the male is in there, right? The dynamic changes when basically the females go into their periods, right? Of
mhm.
laying or whatever. And so for me, when I have a trio, of my mangroves, basically when one monitor is getting ready to lay, the whole cage is thrown off because she's so mean or something like that. Same thing with my Kimberleys too.
Dude, yeah.
I may have them all together, but once once it's time for that female to rock and start laying eggs, it's like, man, I gotta remove stuff and be aware of things like that, you know. But going back to your 9 month acclimation period, and then they're kind of just getting into the gear of like the normalcy and eating again. I think just in the last several months alone, maybe like 30 or 40 people have come to me for grasshoppers or feeders and advice on how to acclimate their tree monitors. You know, the grasshoppers are basically something that they would possibly normally eat, and they seem to be really attracted to them, you know. And so it's basically helped quite a few people get an animal that isn't eating at all to basically fully acclimated and back up to weight and all that stuff like that. So for a lot of the, you know, it's not a plug to myself because you can do other things to get them in gear as well, but acclimating your tree monitors can be a real pain when you get them, especially if they came in all messed up, wild caught. It's like we've already mentioned they're shy and delicate, right? But I mean, to really have to deal with that, and then they don't eat, and it's like you're failing them, but you're trying your hardest. And so, you know, it's like all of this is, I don't know how to say it, but it's like it all just is for nothing if sometimes they just end up crashing, you know. And to be honest, not everybody acclimates and quarantines stuff as they come in. They're basically brought in and the dollar mark is put on them and they're basically shipped to the next person, you know. And I think all of them have dealt with that in some way or another.
I was just going to say, in regards to that too, I don't know if I ever told you about it, but so my first tree monitor was my female, right? She came to me already super social, and she's just gotten more social since I've had her, which made the entire process really easy. But my second tree monitor that I had was a long-term captive adult male
1 month
blue tree. No, so the guy that had him before me, I say long-term captive because it's like we don't know how old he was when he got him, but the guy before me had him for 4 years.
Okay.
And he said in the 4 years that he had him, he never once saw this animal eat. It would only eat when he was out of the room.
Yeah.
He kept it like at his work office or something. He was a good guy. I just didn't put in the effort. I don't know. I don't know how to put it.
That showpiece, but they're not really.
But so it was basically just, you know, throwing hoppers. It'll eat when he leaves. And so he didn't get to interact with it at all. I mean, I don't know. I just, when I got the animal, he told me he had never seen it eat. He never got to hold it, never got to do anything. So my goal from day one was I'm going to watch this animal eat, and it's going to happen. I don't know when, but hopefully in a few months. And so my process was basically starting from scratch, was getting the animal comfortable in its environment. So literally, I just kind of gauged how bad it was, and if it saw me, it would hit a wall, regurgitate whatever it had eaten, run and hide. And so literally what I did was I took a blanket and I covered the enclosure with it, and I left it for 2 weeks. I would throw in its food, hide the door of the enclosure, let it stay behind a blanket so it didn't have to see me.
Yeah.
Gave it 2 weeks, pulled the blanket down, like night and day. Changed it completely. We also did that with our torch monitor for a little bit, which helped, and we did it with our male Prasinus, and it helped him also. You can actually see one of them moving back there.
Yeah.
But
nice way, man. I didn't realize they were that big.
It's 6 foot tall by 4 by 2 deep. Animal plastics. I'm like 2 hours from them, so I just drive and pick them up. It's super convenient.
So
the
from the
rest
rest
of
of
the
the
world
community, can you go
waits
over
2
there and
years.
ask them what the heck? No, I'm kidding.
Right, dude. Yeah. But
Wait
no.
2
Anyway,
years.
so I yeah. So I mean, trying to wrap up that story. So basically, I just let it chill, not worrying about me. So it got acclimated. It was eating, and then I pulled the blanket down, and then I moved the enclosure to an area that I frequented every day. Like it would be basically where they are now. Like it would see me with my back turned every day. Um,
Yeah.
and so just from it having that experience, within a week or two, I could walk by the cage. It wouldn't run. It wouldn't hide. And then I started trying to like put food in for it, and I'd sit on the other side of the room and just watch it, and
Yeah.
I'd watch it eat. And then the second I would see it grab food, I would just inch my way closer. So while it's, putting the food away, it would see me and continue eating, which helped it go, maybe it's not a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Couple days later, I started like, I'm not kidding. I would like hide around the side and just inch food into it. And it just started taking food off Tom's. And then I started, like peeking out a little bit more and just doing those slow, like baby steps, baby steps. I
Yeah.
have videos of it. This guy, 4 years, never got it to eat off Tom's. 2 months, and I had it walking out onto my forearm, climbing up my shoulder for food.
Nice,
That's
man.
awesome. Mine aren't doing that yet. So
Right. But I'm
Yeah.
telling you, you just got to start as small as possible, and you put in the work, and it's so worth it because they get so much more comfortable. They're not as skittish. They'll try different
Yeah.
foods. It's worth it.
I think you're onto something with, it's just a thought I've had. I think I've talked with Kai a little bit about it in the past. It's just that actual interaction with monitors actually
Mhm.
helps them
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
you. But it has to be done the right way. If
Right.
you can't be just holding it up and throwing it in the bathtub and petting
Dude.
it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's
Basically, what
awful.
you're doing, you're okay. So a lot of people want like some type of formula on how to tame things or how to get things to, be that social thing that tongue feeds, walks up your arm, chills on your shoulder, right?
Don't grab it.
And yeah, it's really just I mean, yeah, we're trying to let the animal come to you, and a lot of people say that, right? But what he's doing is just showing the animal by not even really grabbing it and not forcing it to do anything. He's just hanging out in the room. It's
Yeah.
just the repetition of that. The they normally catch on to that, and then he's also not really posing as a threat by offering food, kind of working the animal on its own terms. And, I mean, and really, you will have to I would say push a boundary a little bit. Let's say when you
Hmm.
have to take them out a little bit, but you still want to kind of lift them out or have them come out onto you rather than ripping them out of a hollow or something like that, and
Yeah.
amputating them more. And
I
you're
find one of the
basically,
worst things you could do too is ending an interaction on like a bad note. Like
yeah,
if the last thing that they do is they mad dash away from you, you basically just wasted that entire time of what you did because the thing that they're going to recognize the next time they see you is they're going to smell you and they're going to remember them running away, not the good interaction that you had. So
yeah,
like in my eyes, one of the most important things that you could do is like a comfortable exit,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have a much better experience next time around.
Before we get too much into things, Cody, this is the first time I've talked to you, and so I
Yeah,
know
man.
for a lot of the listeners, I forget to do this sometimes. But just who are you? Tell what got you into keeping monitor. Well, what got you into keeping, but how'd you get to
Yeah.
monitors? And give me a little background.
Cody's
Yeah, man.
just fresh in the game, dude. He's
Dude,
like
yeah.
fresh.
So I got my first reptile 5 years ago.
Nice.
Um yeah, and it was like to give you an idea how like fresh off I was with it. It's like a horror story but with a happy ending. Like I had a friend come over and they're like, "Hey man, can you take this lizard?" And I'm just like, "Okay, maybe. What is it? Do you have a cage for it?" And they're like, "Look, I don't even know what it is. Um it's big, and this dude was abusing the hell out of it, and his girlfriend gave it to me, and I don't know what it is. So she brings it over to me. I literally took a picture of it and had to Google image search what it was, and it was a Savannah monitor. Like that's
Man.
that's where I started. And this dude had like abused this animal, like picked it up
Ah,
by its tail and whipped it. And so, they were keeping it in an adult female Savannah monitor in a 10-gallon aquarium with a heat light, no water on Repticarpet. And
hmm.
she couldn't even turn around, let alone because of how small it was. Her tail was necrotic. We had to have it amputated.
Oh man.
Um, and this animal was so poorly taken care of. And then I'm not kidding. Like I just started after I found out what it was. I just started YouTubing Savannah monitor, Savannah monitor. First thing I found was Kevin McCurley. Back then, he was doing a bunch of Savannah monitor stuff. That, like I said, this was 5-6 years ago, and from there I just started learning more and more about him. And the first thing I saw was socializing. So that was my
Hmm.
first interest, was his videos on that. And that's why like breeding wasn't even at the forefront of my mind when I got into this. It was just I want social animals. I want
Yeah,
to work
that's
with them.
what everybody thinks. I mean, if you think about it, that's why we talk about the beginners now when their first thing is, hey, how do I get it to come out? How come it's not
Right,
eating it?
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean from there I just I actually gave it to somebody else that said they had another Savannah that was a big male. It's now, I don't know if it's cohabbed, but I know they have like a 10 by 5 by 5 enclosure. And this female that had the amputated tail, all this is now breeding, like almost
Nice.
continuously. So it was definitely a success story. I didn't do anything. I just took it to
Yeah.
the vet because I
No,
didn't know
you
what the
did a
hell I
lot.
was
You did
doing.
a lot.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, and then from there I got a boa, and then I got a green tree python, and then a quince monitor,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then I just was on Craigslist one day and saw this dude in my city was selling a tree monitor, and I'm like, I've seen those. Let me look into those for a minute. And dude gave me like one of those big converted China cabinets with a tree monitor in it, and that's how I got her. And yeah, I mean that's
Awesome.
basically how it went from there. Like I have a couple pythons, a berm, carpet, green tree. My roommate has a bunch of stuff upstairs, and then we just have a torch monitor, a female black tree monitor, and then the pair of Prasinus.
So,
And
like when you first got that cabinet set up, right?
mhm.
And you got the tree monitor. How are you setting it up then? Like we're obviously what knew then and now are quite different. But would you be
Mhm.
able to kind of go through your setup then for
Yeah,
people?
so it's one of those things where it looked great because it was a month and a half old, but after even just 6 months of it, the wood
Yeah,
rotted
yeah.
and it wasn't stable, and she figured out how a way to get out of it. And so luckily she was as social as she was. I found her literally sleeping in my pillowcase.
Nice.
Like, yeah, and she just pops her head right out. But the temp and humidity was okay. It's everything else that was bad. I at this point from
The
that
function of
experience
the cage,
alone,
you mean?
yeah, like I swear off like furniture conversions because the floor of it was rotting out because of the humidity. Um, the doors were rotting away, things were rusting in it, and then it's just not ideal. You don't have a substrate layer.
Right.
You just miss a lot. Um, with that said, though, it was a 4 tall by 3 long by like 1.5 deep for a single female that wasn't even an adult yet. It was great size. She had one basking spot, and then it was hooked up with two mist king nozzles.
Hmm.
Great humidity. She drank off the nozzles. I can't seriously stress how much of a lifesaver mist king is and like misting systems, because
Yeah.
I cannot possibly in a day hand spray enough to give her the water that she needs and then keep the humidity up. I put this thing on a timer. It sprays 4 times a day for 45 seconds each time.
Just
Um,
45 seconds, right?
yeah, yeah. So I kind of play with it, but I mean I'll just run you through what their setup is now, and I'd basically do the same thing for a single animal minus one of the basking spots. But for a pair, 100% you want 2 basking spots because you can cohab them long term. The only time you would really have to remove is if your female lays. Not everybody has the experience, but I'd rather, get ahead of it than risk something bad happening. You start seeing breeding activity, pull the male out is like a week after they're done. But with that said, they want to separate sometimes, so they both have enough hides where they can be away from each other. I have 6 hides in there that they can each go into. Some of them are cork rounds mounted into the walls. Some of them are just loose around. There's 2 basking spots. One sits between 125 and 130. The other sits 110 to 115. And then I have the lights on like a 14-hour day, 10-hour night cycle. The Mist King comes on right when the lights do. I'll spray for... Okay, so I changed it recently. So now I have it about 30 minutes behind because when the lights come on, she's out within 5 minutes. So I have it delayed about 30 minutes. So when the lights come on, she has time to get out. It sprays for a minute and a half. That gives her a chance to get, a bunch of water in the morning, drink everything that she needs to, and then 2.5 hours later, 45 seconds. 2.5 hours later, 45 seconds. And if that's pretty much just how I go until the lights turn off at night. If it's in the winter, I will sometimes have it spray in the middle of the night just to keep humidity up a little bit for like 15, 20 seconds, just because I'm in the Midwest and it gets really dry in the middle of the winter. But I mean, that's pretty much it.
When people ask me what type of misting setup do I use, right? I tell them I don't use anything at all because I really don't have to spray that often.
Right.
Like when I tell people, hey, like when you have a hooked up setup, I mean, you're really only wanting to spray it for like a minute and then let it evaporate for a few hours and then you can hit it again.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to do like no more often than like 2.5 hours. But I try to keep their humidity between like 75 and 80%, if not more. I really don't want it to drop below that. When hers has gone below that, it was in that furniture conversion enclosure that she had, and she actually started getting stuck shed on the tip of her tail because of it, and it like almost went necrotic because it was stuck and I couldn't get it off. We had to take her to a vet and have it treated. And that experience alone, I keep it higher now for sure. I will say on this note, so like I said, this enclosure is 6 feet tall, 4 feet long, 2 feet deep. I think that's ideal for a pair of, Prasinus. Prasinus are the smallest tree monitor species. I can't say I'd put a pair of blue trees in this. I would probably go a foot or two longer, taller. But I think this is great for Prasinus. A single animal, really, of any of the species, if you just have one, instead of 6, 4, 2, you can do 4 tall, 4 long, 2 deep. And that's incredibly manageable for people.
That'd be minimum size that we'd really recommend. I mean, just to get the full necessity and usage out of the cage when you have to fit in everything.
Yeah, exactly.
We've learned it, right? I mean, even the cage you have right now, you're all still limited on some space as far as like all the nesting that you wanted to do. Remember, we had to like find the right area, right? And so
I was actually going to get to that. Yep. So for a single animal, like I said, 4 tall, 4 long, 2 deep, I think that's perfect. I wouldn't personally recommend lower than that. Still lets them explore. You could cover the walls. I'm a big advocate for, modifying the walls, putting cork on the walls, everything. Just the more stuff that they have to climb on, it makes it seem to them like it's bigger. But with that said, what he was alluding to there, in the process of breeding and trying to set up a nest box, with these taller enclosures, unless your room is 80 degrees, you're not going to be able to get your ambient temps up high enough.
Yeah.
So we had to actually install in the bottom, like 2 feet, 2.5 feet, an extra heat source to raise the lower temperature. And it was such a pain going through that whole process. We lost our entire first clutch because of it, because we just couldn't get it right. And I think one of the big things was because we didn't have it soon enough. It was like most of the eggs were infertile just because they don't see a adequate nesting. They don't have any access to it until 3 weeks. They don't fertilize the eggs. This is hypothesis. I can't actually cite any sources for that, but that's my thought. I want to start doing what Matthew Kosman does. If you've ever seen any of his YouTube videos, it's Reptile Revolt. He does the exact same dimensions as mine, but rotated. So it's 6 long, 4 tall.
Yeah.
And that makes it so that you could still get a decent substrate layer, but you don't battle the bottom 2 feet being too cold. So then he doesn't even, I'm sure he still does, but at that point, you really don't need to supplement heat the way that I have to and then fight with all this.
Right.
And so going forward for pair enclosures, I'm going to do 6 foot long instead of tall. And that's just going to make the whole process easier, because they don't even use the bottom 2 feet anyway. It's too dark and it's too cold.
Yeah, that's what I did when I learned for my mangroves. I used to have them in 8 foot tall, and then it'd be 4 foot by 4 foot. And they, don't get me wrong, they utilize the heat and they loved it up high, but I was left with just the 4 by 4 foot square footage, and you can only really fit so much there. When those are 3 to 4 feet and they need to nest, and you have to accommodate the water dish, the nest, the other decor, just to make the cage useful and stuff like that. All that really won't fit. So going back a little bit, some of you guys, and don't get me wrong, we're not discouraging the tall enclosures. It's just you have to, like I said, you have to accommodate. And what he did was basically add lower level heating. Now, to most people, as a beginner, you're gonna put stuff at the very top in a couple fixtures, and it's gonna buffer the cage out sort of well. But in winter times, or let's say you have a cold floor, a cold room, you run the AC, or you have a lot of soil that isn't heated. Basically,
I'm in the basement.
Yeah, it's just not usable soil that's up to temperature, humidity, and up to par, basically. So your cage is basically cold down there. So the bottom level heat is a real game changer if you want to. It'll not only heat the bottom of your enclosure, heat the soil so it's useful, it creates humidity, and then humidity rises naturally, right? And then you have a better balance instead of everything just at the top. And then your need for heat at the top is also less because you've accommodated for that at the bottom. Heat will also naturally rise, and with the humidity, and it'll make your enclosure more stable rather than just everything at the very top.
That's actually one thing that I started doing also, is after I added this heat, and let me say, it was such a pain figuring it out. It works now. We had to basically, it's like I said, it's, if you guys can see, it's about right here in the enclosure. You can see all the cork rounds covering it. It's so that the mist system doesn't hit the heat source, and because it's an actual bulb.
Right.
I found like one of the purple nightlight ones that I use. It radiates pretty well. But so what I started doing also to help with humidity is, I don't know how, but they make a mess of their water bowl. So every 3 weeks or so, I'll just go in and dump that whole thing straight under that heat light. So then it just evaporates all of it right up into the enclosure, into humidity. So then I don't have to worry about hand spraying it ever. And it's really convenient just to be able to do things like that.
For me, that lower level heat, I guess, as far as recommending it, you can hang a heat lamp off of some type of protective ledge, and then it's basically a very short box. Okay, so it has to be a box because you have to hold the wire somewhere. They can't just be all willy-nilly, all loose. Okay, you have to actually have it'd be maybe even 1 inch tall, and so you're using just the thin cuts of plywood, and you're hooking up a lamp on the inside, or sorry, at the very bottom, and the wires are sitting on the inside safer rather than just out anywhere. And then you can run that through the back of the enclosure. Put your little box on, I would say the shelf, they're like L shaped, and they're basically for the shelves, right? And you can hook that up at the bottom, screw that into your cage, and that creates basically a little awning for the lamp that's going to be there, sort of protectively. But you'll have to kind of figure out a safe way to do it, because there's going to be stuff dropping, and so it can't just be an exposed bulb so much.
Yeah. So to give you, especially for the people that are listening that are battling this issue, because like I said, I'm in a basement and the AC works 10 times better down here than it does upstairs. So it's like 65 degrees down here half the time. So their ambient without that on is 70 degrees in the lower half of the enclosure. So it's 100% a necessity. And I just went on Amazon, I think it was. I would have to pull up specifically what I got, but it was one of the caged fixtures. So it was the base for the light itself, and then also a cage with it. So we just popped a hole through the back of it to run the cord through, and then put the cage right over the hole, so that not only can they not sit on the bulb, they can't get to the cord, they're not going to get out that hole. And so it worked out way better than I expected. But it was just trial and error figuring out what was going to work.
So is that bulb arranged horizontally? Is it sticking out from the side? Or is it
I have mine propped at an angle. I would prefer it was, straight 45 degrees. Or straight 45. But no, I guess that's 90, isn't it? Yeah, 45, 90.
Well, if it's
yeah.
I thought you meant a straight angle of 45 degrees.
Right. But mine's a little crooked, but I would prefer it just to be sticking straight out horizontally. I know Travis, I don't know his last name. He set up one the same fashion, but he did his an actual heat bar at the bottom back of his enclosure, and then about a foot above it basically did like a bird box for like a nesting box right above it. Because really it wasn't even just that I was trying to raise the lower end temperature. I was trying to get an adequate heat to radiate up into my nesting box. And so I basically
two birds with one stone.
Yeah, I MacGyvered together a nesting box. I can actually grab it in a second and show you. But it's literally a cork round that I hot glued a piece of garden liner to and filled with cocoa. And then so after we got the lower temperature right, I just started moving it around until I saw it was about 83, 84 degrees. And then I just left it there and she went to town. 5 minutes. So we tried tubbed boxes. We tried propping them up in the enclosure. Any of those tubs she wouldn't even touch. I would put her in there and she'd run out. I put that cork round in. Within 5 minutes, she dug halfway to the bottom, came out, dug the rest of the way down.
Nice.
It's the only thing she will use now.
Little prima donna over there,
Dude, let me.
Almost like what I would say, very specific, kind of, because let's just say they don't come down to the ground too often, and a lot of times when a region is pretty consistent in temperature, let's say like a rotting stump or a rotting log would have a bunch of soil in the bottom of it or in the base of it. And I think me and Alan were just talking about this the other day. Some tree monitors in the nest bin, they just lay it on top of the soil. They don't even dig it. And so I think they're laying in a confined area that's a broken stump or some type of log, that at the base of that log is the accumulation of rotting plant material, rotting bark and things like that, and they essentially set them right there. Other keepers, I believe, guy Montecalvo is, if I'm pronouncing his last name right,
I believe you are.
John and John and Alex as Sim, basically designed this this I think PVC giant tube, right? And there's a face
Yep.
cut out of a piece of it, right? And so then they've attached a little hinge to that, and so they can open and go in and out when they want for their their arm size and arm length to dig in and out of it. But really,
Man, it's
this
gonna kill me if I
tube is
can't find
then
this.
just designed and stuffed with a bunch of core fiber, sandy soil, and in design to mimic a tree rotting stump.
Right. So what's
Yeah.
funny is I was actually just browsing Instagram the one day. Like, I think you and I were talking, trying to brainstorm ideas.
Yeah.
I actually saw John's post on Instagram about that PVC tube.
Yeah.
And I went, you know what? I'm just going to make this out of cork bark. So
Yeah.
that's literally what inspired me with this. And it has worked so incredibly well. So, I mean, I don't even think I ever messaged John and told him I kind of co-opted his idea, but man,
Hey, John, I mean, thanks for inspiring us.
yeah,
I mean,
dude, that
that's how we
literally
work.
saved my animal.
That's really how we work, where one guy may have an idea and he's using one product, one way to do it, right? But then you took that same idea and you have a whole nother material where you can apply almost a very similar aspect on what that guy just did. And so we all are learning from each other, whether or not we want to congratulate each other or not. We're all experiencing just from one another. We get to live through it, and we get to get a feel of it.
Yeah, dude, and work with what you got. Like, I'm telling you, I was kicking myself trying to figure out where I can buy PVC, trying to do all this because I felt like I needed to replicate exactly what he was doing. You don't have to do everything to a T the way you see somebody else doing it. You can, be creative. I already had this stuff laying around because I had garden liner because I make like bioactive stuff. Hot glues just because everybody has hot glue, and I just had a bunch of cork bark, so I'm like, you know what, I'll just makeshift it, and it worked. I don't have like the side entrance, but it's not even necessary. And like, there's so many things that you can just be creative with in general, not even just like breeding, but there's so many things that you can kind of make your own in the reptile stuff, like those sleeves that I started making for the grasshopper cages and stuff, Kai, like
the game changer,
stuff like that.
Game changer.
I like that.
Yeah, and I literally, you sent me a video on Facebook, and we're like, yeah, look at these lubbers or something, and I saw the cages, and I'm like, I don't even care about the lubbers, like this, I want that sleeve, and so I just started toying around with it.
Yeah, that's man, that's how, again, man, that's literally how we work. Just seeing ideas from one guy to the next, and and that's
we stuffed it back in here.
Inspiration. Are you good, man?
So for the listeners out there, for I don't know, the last 5-10 minutes, Codey's been walking around, impressing the heck out of me because he has a wireless headset and mic.
Yeah. So
this is what she lays in.
It's literally a 1.5 foot to like possibly.
Yeah, it's like I measured it. It's like 14 inches by like 4 inches. And I literally just fill it with cocoa. I put it in there 2 days ago, and she dug to the bottom already.
And so
she's not even breeding yet.
And you may not have this right in a direct, like it's not a. What I would normally recommend would be a heated nest source, but this is hanging in an area that's the perfect temperature, right?
Yeah. So if you can see me here, the heat is right here.
Okay.
Yeah, and the cork tube starts here, and it angles out away from it. So as it goes up, it gets a gradient. So it's not all one temperature. So I have it angled away from the heat.
That's awesome. So the listeners get what he's saying. The heat source is actually below this cork bark that he's using. Okay? Mm-hmm. He's using the fact that the heat radiates, or the heat goes up. And so your temperatures at the top of your cage, if you have a heat source that's lower down, it's going to maintain that heat. It's going to give you a gradient towards the top of the cage. And so he's using the right temperatures within that gradient to place that tube for nesting. That's a great idea. we kind of, I think, do similar things with similar cages, but let's see.
Probably the hardest part was actually, so I have their cage really cluttered, and it's kind of a blessing and a curse. It made it a lot easier to be able to actually hold up that nest tube right there.
Yeah.
But needing to oh, this is too hot, rearrange everything. Oh, this is too cold, rearrange everything again.
Yeah.
And so it took like a few hours just of moving things around to get it where I wanted it. But now, I mean, you saw me, I lift it out, do what I want, put it back in.
Yeah.
Nothing moves.
It's easy.
I like it.
Simplified, because that's that crazy thing that some people don't realize, man. It's like when you have so much volume in soil, digging that is not easy.
Dude, that, and like especially how I said where that's at in there, that's about, I don't know, 1.5 feet. Oh no, it's like 2.5 feet below the top of the cage. I literally tried propping a like 40-pound garbage can full of soil up there to get her to use it, breaking my back, putting it in there, breaking the sticks it's on, bowing the cage, and then trying to heft that thing out of there. Like, it was not worth it. This is so much better. That thing weighs like 10 pounds at most. Like, so much better.
I like that. I'm probably going to be making some similar things here very soon to try out.
Do it. I mean, you saw how big that thing was, and she goes down, wraps around, and comes right out.
I want to try something similar with my my Timors and the Peacock monitors. Right now, I actually have their nest bin is basically sitting on kind of a stool in the middle of their cages, because that's where my temperatures are right. So the nest box that I'm using for them isn't actually on the ground; it's suspended, so to speak, sitting on the stool. But it's not very appealing to the eye. They're just these black totes. So I've been thinking about some different ideas like this. And
I'm all naturalistic, dude. If I can do it natural looking, I will. And that's why once that worked, I'm like, whatever, I'm not trying anything else.
I think I need to place that order. I've been talking so long about placing that order for cork. I just need to, call up Maryland.
Maryland?
Yeah, and just say, send it
Where
all.
Where are you going through?
Maryland cork.
Maryland cork?
Oh, where do you live?
California.
Oh, you do? Okay. So I tried pricing out with them. A couple of friends and I were about to order like 150 pounds of cork. And they have the best looking pieces of cork, but the shipping gets you because it's all freight shipping. So they quoted us like $475 freight shipping.
Oof.
Yeah,
okay,
so
cork,
that was before the cork. So
I mean, you're better off just finding the right pieces at the shows. You're gonna get. Okay, I've ordered from them before. I've ordered joint orders with other people. There's like 2 pieces that are good. I mean, 2 pieces that are what you want is what I mean. Like the rest are good. They're fine. I'm not gonna be too picky, but really useful pieces, not too many.
Dude, cork is like a precious commodity now too. There's this shop near me. Not gonna name names, but now they're charging. It's the weirdest thing because you'd think it's by the pound, so if it's bigger, it's gonna cost more. So their cork rounds are $9.99 a pound, but then their extra large ones are $15.99 a pound, and it's like it's already by the pound. Stop changing the price of it.
Right.
So you got these like $30-$40 pieces of cork that they're now charging $90 for, and I'm just like, no, I'll take my luck with Josh's frogs. I get free shipping, like whatever.
I can do math, right?
This is why cork now only gets reserved for a few species. More of the Indo species. All the Australian stuff, sorry, all your cork got yanked out of your cages.
You should see this cage. We dropped, my roommate and I, we probably dropped about $550 on cork bark on this, and that was on sale. Like, we covered every single wall. One wall has the universal rock on it. It's only for about 3 feet of it. I wish I would have done like the full 6 feet, but every wall is full of cork, and it was
I removed. So I have this thing where I'm trying to get all my monitors more used to each other and also used to me. So I've actually removed all the cork out, and then everything is now left with like pieces of plywood shelves and stuff like that. I have a couple animals that still have the cork in them, but for the most part, I've removed a fair amount so they're super exposed to each other. Um, and I have like a whole baker's rack, just a bunch of cork that I don't even know if I'm going to be using them again after how I have it set up now. So it's like maybe $500 worth of pieces, you know. And there's pieces that I can shove my whole leg in, like that's how big they are. Yeah, so you know, they're just so solid, and I don't want to give them away or throw them away or anything like that. But oh, dude, there's my little guy.
Yeah, here's yours.
All right, so currently he just pulled
Tell
out
us what we got here.
baby green tree monitor. Awesome, man.
Yeah, and he's just chilling. He's a little flighty when I first stick my hand in there, but he calms down real quick. I'm working with him a bunch.
Nice. So yeah, tell us about that, man. I know we congratulated you a little bit at the beginning, and you're now about what, three weeks into them coming out, right?
Yeah, about 2.5. Hold on, let me see if I can get the both of them out at once.
So they're brand new.
Yeah, they're about 2 weeks old. Yeah, look at them, and they're just
crazy.
Chill, dude.
Awesome, man.
You know, from the look of it, my sand monitors are about the same size. I didn't realize that those babies were that big.
And you could see the size difference too. The one right here on my right, your left, I think. Yeah. This one is considerably bigger than this one, just because it started eating a few days sooner. It's so crazy how much faster this one's growing.
Now, that's wild, man. It's weird to see you holding them. I know we've shared a lot of videos and you send me stuff, but man, they're actually really dope.
Yeah, dude, I freaking love them, and like they just hop right back in. They're chill. One thing that I'm trying to do is make sure I don't give them too many hides, because I want to make sure. I mean, again, you see my computer right here. Their enclosures there. They're right in the middle of my living room down here. Every time somebody walks by, they see us. I want them to see as many people as humanly possible. They have plenty of coverage. I put a live plant in there with them. So they have plenty of coverage, but there's no like, I'm going to hide and not see anyone.
Disappear,
Yeah, because I want, like, when they go to their new homes, I want them to be outgoing and social, like I know they can be. And the one already is. Like the second one I picked up, just scoop it right out. It doesn't care. You can reach over it. You can. It's still a little iffy on the tail. That's one thing with all monitors, though. But like my female tree monitor, I'm not kidding. I can walk up behind her and lift her by her tail, and she just hangs. Like she doesn't care about anything, dude. But yeah, they're awesome. Right. Yeah, they are awesome though. So one thing that Kai and I both kind of realized in this process was, man, do they take their time eating for the first time.
Yeah.
We were expecting 3, 4, 5 days before they had their first meal. The first one ate at 11 days. The second one ate at day 15.
Yeah. After we separated it.
Yeah. I think it might have been eating really like kind of reluctantly, like not a lot, but it's eating now. I wanted to be able to track how much, so I moved it to a different enclosure. I wanted to make sure I could like track bowel movements. I thought I had seen some, but so I put it on all paper towel, very minimalistic, and I threw in 5 grasshoppers, and I would just every couple hours count, see if there was still 5. And then I would notice 4 and 3, and then the one day I actually saw it eat. So I'm like, all right, it's cool. It'll go back in. So they're doing awesome though. They I call the one Chuds because it just guzzles water every time it sees it.
Nice.
So they're drinking well. They're eating. They're doing.
Now,
great.
Are they drinking out of standing water, or is that from water that's spilled?
So both actually. I have a like little. I don't know where they went. Right here, like these little ketchup cups that you can get at the like fast food places. I just wash those and fill them with RO water and stick them right in like next to their basking spot, and they'll just go right up and drink out of it. I most of the time in the morning, I'll take both of them out just to socialize a little bit. And while I'm holding them, I'll just hold up a cup of water in front of them and they'll drink out of my hand.
Very
Nice.
That's
cool.
kind of my routine.
Very, very cool.
Yeah,
And
man.
I like that a lot. I've noticed with some wild caught animals, whether it's snakes or lizards, they don't drink standing water. In my experience,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have to spray them down, or they will actually, even if water's right next to them, they will dehydrate to death. And
Yep.
Yeah.
but with babies, I try to kind of do the same thing. Is usually put some standing water in there, even if I have to kind of stick their face in it a little bit, and let them tongue flick it.
Yeah. That's kind of how I was at first. The first couple days of them being out of the egg, I was taking them out of the enclosure, putting them in a tub with, a half an inch of water in it so that they can like get the feel of it, keep them clean. And then also they can, make sure that they're drinking. I will say my female, she will not drink standing water unless it's in my hand, like out of a
Yeah.
cup. Otherwise she drinks by the Mist King comes on and she can get like, if the Mist King's here, she could sit right here and she'll just stick her face up and let it spray her in the face for a minute and a half. The male, though, he will drink standing water all day. He will cling to the wall and go down and stick his face into it while he's upside down. And he'll drink out of that all day.
Nice. Yeah, the cups of water, I don't think many beginners realize. All right, there's the water dish. That's the one that they're thrashing and defecating in, right? Now,
Mhm.
obviously, we don't really want them drinking out of that, but that's still a fact that we have to live with. That they're gonna make that watery mess every day. After you've cleaned it, they're gonna go in there and thrash it. By later that day, it's essentially mud, right, and not really drinkable water. And then there's probably also poop in it, bacteria build up, and so that's essentially not good for them to be drinking. So what we do to still accommodate for the necessity to drink and stay hydrated and get clean water, we have little cups of water hanging around in our closures. And those little cups of water are less likely to be thrashed because for one, they can't get into it, but they'll still try. They're dumb, but they'll still try. And though if you place it somewhere up high or on a ledge or out of like any type of stationary thing where you can set a little bowl, those would be really helpful for keeping your animal and giving it still available drinking water rather than having it on the one source, which is the pan of water.
I think that's one of the best things that you can do, like one of the best decisions that you can make for your enclosure for a tree monitor too, because they don't want to go to the ground to drink. If you can figure out a way to get like, I don't know, like one of the how would I even explain it? Like one of those twist in like rings that you can get for like, I don't know, like bird feeders or whatever. Something that you could fit like a deli cup into.
Yep.
Put two of those in there, just twist them into a branch or like zip tie something to a branch that you could stick a deli cup in. And like you said,
what I do is I have a deli cup and I tie basically a little rope around it, and then I string that into the wall, right? I'll have like a fish hook screw or something, and I'll tie that to that. So that's my stationary cup now. And then I have a deli cup that sits in it, and I take that one out and I change that one regularly. So that way that cup doesn't get tipped over, because when you have the little cups and they're just sitting there, they'll just thrash them around. They'll fling them across the cage and whatever. And then you basically don't have your clean water anymore.
Yeah.
So, I have that stationary setup where I just slip a cup into a thing, or I'll have a heavy crock dish that they can't tip over or something like that,
I think
some of the go ahead. You are the guest, or you get to
I was just going to say, I think one of the biggest takeaways as a new keeper or even an intermediate or experienced keeper, it doesn't even matter, is just variety is the key. And options are the key. I can't tell you the number of times where I've had this one friend in particular say, I don't care if you give them a 30-degree spot and a 200-degree spot, just give them a radius, let them choose.
Yeah.
Like
that's
give them
actually awesome.
give them spraying water, give them standing water, give them running water. Like as many options as you can provide, do it. If you can fit 3 basking spots and still have a cool spot, do it. Like just whatever. You still have the standard of the animal to live up to, but as long as you can meet that, if you want to go beyond it, like add multiple hides, add more ways of consuming water, add more basking spots, like more things to climb on, whatever it is. There's so much variety that you can do.
And I like that, when you're learning a new animal, give them all those options, especially if it's something you don't have a lot of experience with. And then you can refine those options as you get to know your own animal and your setup, and you see what they use. Then take away some of the options they don't use for whatever reason they don't like them, and don't forget them because it might work for another animal. And go through the same process again. We want a standard kind of cookie cutter example and care sheet for a lot of things. Yeah, but there just isn't one. Sometimes you just have to learn to give, like you said, give options.
But one of the biggest things too with what you said also is know what you're taking away. Because if it's like, oh, I'm taking away its eighth hide and it has 7 more, like, and it doesn't use this one, whatever. But like, I can't tell you the number of times where I've seen people, it doesn't drink standing water, so I'm not going to provide it. Still provide it just in case. Because how can you know it's not using it 20? Are you keeping an eye on it 24/7? You don't know if it never goes to it. So there's still things that it's like, just leave it in there.
Yep.
It doesn't hurt you to leave it. Just leave it.
On that, with my blue trees, I've never seen them drink standing water. But the way that I approach them is I have a large tote that if they wanted to, they could actually swim in. And it has about 6 inches of water at the bottom. They don't use that. I've never seen them go in there, but it's there, and where it's positioned, it actually adds a lot of humidity just into the cage itself. Then I have suspended next to their favorite hide a dish, like a little, I don't know, Tupperware type of dish that is suspended. That's fresh water, and it's close enough where I can reach it. I can dump it out in the cage, fill it back up with fresh, clean water, and it's suspended. They don't ever have to really be exposed to get to it. I've never seen them drink out of that, but it's there. And then I spray down the enclosure until
it's like, I was just going to say my torch monitor. I never see her swim in her water bowl anymore. It's a 10-gallon aquarium. She's still rather small. It's a planted aquarium. I don't see her swim in it. You know how I know she uses it? Because every time she goes in it, she knocks the freaking heater off the wall in it. Because I have like one of those tube aquarium heaters.
Yeah.
I don't see her in it, so you would think she's not using it. But every day when I come home from work, that tube heater is dislodged from the wall from her swimming through it and kicking it off. So it's just something like that. Like, it's still awesome.
Until you find out she's doing it so that she can mess with your day, get a little interaction.
Dude, before I switched to the filter that I have now, I had one of those like over the side tank filters.
Yeah.
She had a full, like I said, she's a small monitor still, but she had a full 10-gallon aquarium, plants, rocks she can hide under, a hide she can go in, fish she can eat, all this stuff. Every day when I get home from work, she would have knocked off the top of the filter and she'd be in the back of it, just laying there. And I'm like, you got this big spot and you're going in the jacuzzi. You're like, what are you doing? Yeah, dude.
Not to get too off track with everything, but to kind of bring it back. So you've now been successful with hatching out babies, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long did those babies take for you to hatch? For them to have
156 days. I was expecting 155, and they went. So let me go from day one. So we actually had problems with this clutch too, and I'll get into that also. So
how many clutches were there before this?
2. The first one was completely infertile. The second one, so the first clutch was 3 eggs, all infertile. She scattered all of them, ate 2 of the eggs. The second clutch, there was 2 infertile, 1 was fertile. And that's the one where I'm like really leaning. If I had set things up sooner, if I had maybe fed her a little bit more, like supplemented her foods more, we might have gotten more fertiles, whatever. 2 of those eggs failed right away. Like within 2 weeks, they collapsed. That other egg went 145 days and died. Sucked. Learning,
Yeah.
still learning though.
That's the fun. That's like, it's a bittersweet. Matt Costin tells me you can't have the sweet
without the bitter,
sour, without the sour.
Yeah, dude, it's so true. Truer words have never been spoken. I'll put it that way. But yeah, anyways, so both of those gestation was 28 days. So from the day that I saw them actually breed and that she was receptive, it was 28 days later she laid her eggs on the dot. So this time it was November 29th, and I saw her being receptive. She took down 3-day-old quail. That's my favorite thing to feed them up until the grasshoppers. That's been like the 100% thing that gets her cycling is sometimes I'll temp cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will cut off the mist king, dry out the cage, drop their basking temps. Like I'll basically turn off one light completely and then drop the other one down from 130 degrees down to like 110, and I'll leave it for 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll still feed her kind of heavily through, and I'll feed him less. And then on that last like 3 or 4 days, I'll just pack her full of food as much as she'll take, and she'll eat 3-day-old quail at a time.
Nice.
And typically any other time, if he tries breeding her, she runs away. I do that, and then next day I bump the temp back up like clockwork.
That's awesome.
12 hours later, every single time he is chasing her down. Usually the first day she's not receptive, I give her another big meal. The next day she is literally like courting him almost. I've literally seen her wedge herself under him and lift her tail and wrap it around his, trying to like force breeding on him.
So now you said temp cycling. How long do you cut the temps for?
It depends.
I'm sorry, cut the Mist King for?
Yeah, I've been playing with it lately. So when you cut the Mist King, you're obviously gonna have to be a lot more on top of hydration yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 2-3
this is
times
okay
a day.
Though. Like the change and all that is sort of what we want. So you guys, as long as you keep up with drinking a little bit of food and some basking, you'll be okay, you know. But as far as like really giving them a change of temperature and then going back is kind of what we've been working on as far as getting harder species to breed right on top of the ball. You know?
So basically what started it the first time was I was working a bunch and one of their basking lights burned out, and I was just like, you know what? I've heard Kai say he's tried temp cycling. I'm just going to leave it for a couple days. And ended up leaving it for like 5 or 6 days, replaced the light, and next day they were breeding. Literally.
So
and,
for all the listeners out there, so many strides in reptile keeping have been made with a little bit of neglect.
And then we figure that out when it's like, all right, that happened because I think what were you doing? You were going through a move at the time too, no?
So that was the first time, and then the second time they bred, I was moving. And so this room is way colder than the room that they were in at my last place. And they're on dimmers, so I can like just dial down their lights, which is like the most convenient thing I've ever owned in my life for reptile keeping. It's literally just like a dial you just turn, and I'm like, oh, if I want it colder, I just twist it a little. But yeah, we moved, and I think it was just, you know, the day of them being in the tubs and out in the cold because it was October, and then into this enclosure and figuring out the ambience. So like I said, I didn't have the like lower heat in this enclosure when we got here, so it was also just colder in general. So I think that temp change there like really did it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the second time I got eggs from him, and the third time I just to walk through the whole process. I feeding normal, cut the mist king off, and I just kind of played it by ear. I waited until I could see that the bedding was all dry, and because I didn't want it creating any more humidity on its own. So I dried out the bedding, and I just started, hand spraying her to get her drinking and drinking out of a cup in my hand. And then I just kept feeding her. I started feeding her like fattier stuff and like more eggs. So she is picky as hell. She would never take rodents. She wouldn't take dubia roaches for the first year I had her. She would only eat crickets and quail eggs. And then I started ordering like bulk quail online because you can get these like little chicken nugget sized day-old quail. They're
Yeah.
usually like 75 cents each.
They're perfect size.
Wait.
Literally perfect size.
Where are you getting these from?
I ordered from Rodent Pro.
Okay,
that's right. Like Rodent Pro or something. Yeah. So it's like $75 for 100 count, $25 shipping. I think that's what I used to pay. So like $100 for 75 of them. And she would eat one or two and not eat again for 2 days. Like 2 or 3 days. She does this thing where like if she doesn't want food, she doesn't just walk away from it. Like if I put it up to her, she does this and like squints away from it.
Yeah.
And she'd do that all the time. But then when I would drop the temp, I would start rolling like hopper mice and egg yolk, and she would take them that way. Yeah. And then I would like, oh god, what's the process called? I was gonna reference like a cooking term, like dredging. So I would like roll them in calcium and then egg and then back in the calcium.
Oh yeah. No, I totally get it.
Yeah. But I would do that. So she would eat that, and then I would feed her grasshoppers, and then the last like week, she would eat 3 quail at a time, and they'd all be rolled in calcium. Some of them I'd like inject with water just to get her more fluids, and then I bumped the temp up. And this whole time I'm feeding the male less than usual. So usually I'll feed him 5 or 6 like male dubia at a time. Yeah. Now I'm feeding him like 4-ish at a time, like every other day, every 3 days. And just because you don't want them to get lazy. Because if they're overweight, they're not going to perform.
And it's awesome. I got to interrupt real quick to point that out. Feeding males differently than females, and for some animals, some species, feed the males, keep them on an insect diet. That's absolutely fine. Keeps the weight off of them that they're not using, and then learn your female and feed her accordingly. It's okay to branch into. Mm-hmm. I hear some of these people say that it's insect only. Okay, if you're going to do that, feed heavy. Just learn how to feed her.
Oh yeah, heavy.
But also calcium needs to be a lot more. Like in terms of, let's just keep it on topic with Prassinus, right? I think going through, even just myself with the mangroves or other people going through eggs. I first got eggs that were they're called egg oocytes. They're basically little dimples or craters on the eggs, right? And it's like someone else told me that it was me poorly calcifying my food items and the animals absorbing it poorly as well. And so I went ahead and instead of just doing 2 times a week, 3 times a week, I went and did every feeding, like 90-something% of food items.
Exactly. That's what I'm doing now with her, dusting every single food item when I'm trying to get her breeding.
Yeah.
So I'll dust every item.
I would first have those dimples, and then when I got to actually putting more and more calcium, my eggs came out smooth, pearly white. And I think you went through the same thing with your eggs.
From my last time around. Yeah. So I actually thought this was like my worst clutch of eggs because they had the exact thing that he's talking about. They're these tiny, 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 like almost like little windows in the egg, like a
Yeah.
bunch of them, like they're little bumps on them. Um, I, through more reading, found that it can either be A, like he mentioned, like calcium deficiency, or B, she held the eggs too long, and so it's almost like the process started of her, um, like almost reabsorbing them.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of what I was alluding to when I said I had a almost major mess up. So, like I said, I dropped Miss Kane, dropped Temp, um, bumped her feeding a little bit, and then that last couple days, like really slammed her with food, and she was a freaking balloon, man. And that next that night, I raised the temp back up, and this was over like 3 weeks, I think, 2.5, 3 weeks. That temp or that night, I raised the temp back up after she ate like 3 quail at once, which is a feat because these things are like, I'm surprised she can even fit two of them in her stomach, let alone three. And raised the temp up the next morning. Not only did I turn the mist king on and let it run for 4 or 5 minutes, I also had my giant green handled like hand sprayer right here, and I simultaneously was soaking the entire cage with it. And I went to work. I came home, and he was chasing her around trying to breed.
Awesome.
Literally that quick.
Yeah.
So they bred. Everything went well. One thing I'll touch on real quick is the reason I said earlier that it's really important to have a second enclosure. And you were mentioning you have a trio. The reason that I was like really into the idea of that, and then I found that it can actually be a product for disaster, is because if you have a tree monitor like mine, who's the most sociable lizard in the world, um, she lays eggs, comes out just fine. If the male walks anywhere near her basking, she will literally open mouth, chase him down, and try to kill him.
Hmm.
I had to rip both of them out, put him in another enclosure, and let her alone. It happened 3 times now, and the third time I'm like, I shouldn't even have let it try this time.
Yeah.
Um,
It's that female
but
dynamic. It's once she's claimed the nesting, the cage, that or it's like what they do in the wild. They claim a mound or whatever they're laying
yeah,
there, right?
and
And so if another female comes around, she's gonna be a threat. And so
yeah, and
they're all
I
gonna
definitely want to like make that a known thing, like I messed up, but I don't want somebody else to make my same mistake, because what if they did lose their male or their female because they didn't remove them? And so I
Right.
just don't think it's worth the risk.
or remove
It
the
also
eggs. I mean, if you risk losing eggs because of the male interfering, or your the main thing would be also for the female to be egg bound or get go through those complications because she can't lay with him around.
Right.
I've actually seen so many scenarios of like, the male killed the female after she laid, the female killed the male after she laid, or the male and the female were fine, but the male walked into the nest box and ate all the eggs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's far too many risks with very little reward. Just have an extra. Like, I literally bought the Zen Habitat enclosure just to, or my roommate did. He's the one that actually owns the male. We kind of went in on this together. Um, but he bought a Zen Habitat to have for a second enclosure for the male. So now, they breed, and we noticed all breeding stopped, and we give them a couple days. We're going to take the male out, and just let them chill. Because let me tell you, trying to get them acclimated to each other after this is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because she smells him, he smells her. They know that the last time they saw each other, they were trying to kill each other. So it literally, instead of being a 1 or 2 day process, took me 4 freaking months to get them back in the same enclosure without them trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not worth it. And it's so much easier if you can just remove him, give her 2 or 3 weeks, and you should just be able to take the female out, let them see each other, throw them in together.
Yeah, you work so hard, right? Your goal is to get eggs. So right after the breeding is done, he's not he's not needed anymore. And
Right.
so just take him out. He's more of a complication when she gets into that area. It's all about options and availability for the female. If the male is eating much more, getting to the water more, basking more, hogging stuff essentially, right? Getting to it first, she'll just get the scraps, the to bask less because he's annoying, and then the water and getting clean water. For me, the gravid females, I make sure that I go through every day with the little spritzer. I personally don't use a misting system anymore, only because I feel like I lose the whole bonding factor, right? But I mean, some people need that to accommodate other high humidity needs.
Right.
So, but for me, I don't lose that whole bonding thing, and I make sure that my females drink. Another thing that I do that I've also taught other people as well, where I just take a syringe and I inject mice, small little mice, and I fill them up with water, sometimes liquid calcium, but most of the time just water. So that way, as they're eating, they get a mouthful of water, because they're not always going to drink, and I'm not always going to be able to spray them in the mouth, and so it's a guaranteed that they eat and drink.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I started doing that sometimes when I notice she looks not necessarily dehydrated, but like I can tell she hasn't been drinking as much as she should. I'll do that. Or like just give her like a straight up soaked quail, just so she gets something.
That's
but yeah,
what
so
I was
that
gonna
was
say.
yeah. So
Today I'm feeding my sand monitor. I will soak like earlier today. I was just soaking the mice, dripping wet, because there's just such a strong food response. They don't care if it's wet.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah. But no, so that was my like first big mistake that I made in this whole process, was just not removing the male. Like I said, it just added so many complications. It delayed breeding. It delayed just the animals being comfortable, laying, everything, man. The second thing was I was kind of too trusting of my temp gun. So everything was going just perfect. And then, like I said, I actually, like, in a notebook, write down, document everything. The day that I drop temps, the day that I raise them back up, the day that I see copulation. And usually the time from first copulation to her laying is 28 days. This last time around, we hit 31 days and she still wasn't going. And so it was December 27th. So I started losing my mind, man. And I could see she was getting kind of frantic. And she was like pacing around like something wasn't right. She wouldn't lay, but she kept going in the lay box. So I'm like, what's going on? I temped it, and it was saying 87, and I'm like, that's a little high, but that shouldn't be that high that she's not using it. I finally started like comparing it to other temp sources, and I realized the temp gun was reading like 4 degrees low. So it was like 91 in her lay box, and so she wasn't laying because it was drastically too hot. So I had to open all the doors of the cage, put a fan on it, turn down the basking spot. I turned the one off completely, turned the other down, so then the only thing that there was the heat below. And 30 minutes after I did that, she went in, didn't come back out.
Nice.
And she laid. She was healthy after, and the eggs. And I looked at them, and I'm just like, man, these things are shot. And I mean, obviously they weren't. We got two babies out of it. One was infertile. We had 3 fertile eggs. One of them failed in the egg. It was fully developed. I think trying to determine still, like, did the egg rotate at some point, and I just couldn't tell. I had marked them, but I don't know if it rotated before I marked it, because, typically how the babies are like on their back with their head curled over, it was on its stomach with its head under itself.
Okay.
And so it like either drowned or couldn't get out and suffocated something. And so it was fully developed. And yeah, it sucked.
Huh. Did
Yeah,
you
we
check
all
it
but
for
really
an egg tooth?
huh?
Did you check it for an egg tooth? Were there
I
any
did. I didn't see
scratches?
one. There
Okay.
wasn't any scratches. Yeah, I think it was just because of the position it was in. It was like stuck upside down like this.
Okay.
Um, that's my best guess. But yeah. So long story short, that that temp gun is no longer like, yeah, it was 91 pushing 92 degrees in her lay box, and so she held her eggs an extra 4 days, and I think that's why they had those marks on them.
Hey,
Now I know
you're
for this time around.
you're causing me to think about my temp guns. I'm gonna grab another one plus a like just your standard thermometer, basically.
Uh-huh. So one thing that somebody was explaining to me, this dude's words like the gospel to me. It's Damon Kai, you know who he is.
Yeah.
He is so smart with this stuff, and it's so incredible. I couldn't even begin to like recite how he explained it to me, but it's basically something to do with like the way that these sensors, like the $15-$20 temp guns that you get off Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
the way that they interact with certain materials and like the way that they read like the heat as radiation, like they're not meant to read air temperatures, they're meant to read surface temperatures, and the surface temperatures, depending on the material, can throw it off, and there's so much to it. So it's like in one scenario your temp gun could be great, in the next scenario it's going to be drastically off.
Yeah.
And so it's just trying to figure that out. Like it almost makes me want to get like one of those actual, like, not really, but like one of those like Petco
Yeah.
probe ones, and
Yeah.
just stick it in the nest box, like do something other than a temp gun. And that's just another one of those things that I was talking about earlier with variety.
Yeah.
Like have multiple ways to read the temperature.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would have saved me so much issues.
Precision to figure out exactly what's what. I mean, if we're going back and realizing what Cody's mentioned, they're very specific, from 87 and 90-degree nest box to wanting it to be 84 degrees. That's very specific.
It doesn't feel like a huge difference, but it's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Let me
So
tell you. The second that thing hit 84, she was gone, and I didn't see her till the next morning, and she laid.
And so getting your exact precise measurement, whether you're using a thermostat, a thermometer as well, and then also your surface temperature gun, and then multiple things like that, having many thermometers within an enclosure basically gives you a real lowdown instead of just guessing.
Right.
That's where I want people to take away from this is I myself have tried to eliminate the guess, because you're going to do a lot of guessing. You're always going to be like, oh man, I don't know what's really happening here. You'll ask somebody else this and that. You'll get to a point where you possibly with this breeding stage, and you really want to get everything fine tuned, and having a very functional cage. And really, with the heat sources applied to your enclosure in certain areas, will really be making it break for you. If you're not really paying attention to those, and you're just heating it all any which way, and having it go spiking really high without, making sure temperatures are just at a good maximum, but not too high where everything is just out of blitz. And like we mentioned, where your nest box can be 91 degrees and you're not even really know, and so that one thing offsets the whole process. And if
really
you're
does.
obviously trying to get to breeding, I mean, it's going to be hard because you're not paying attention to that one thing. And it can be the same thing for non-breeders. Okay, so just beginners listening to this, your surface temperature for basking is very key. It can't be 150 and 160. It can't be 200. It has to be like 125, 130-ish. You can get into the realm of 140 as long as you have a good space and gradient between when you're using the right type of bulbs, right? But I don't recommend you just blasting a really hot lamp, putting a log underneath the thing about 10 or a foot inches away, you want to make sure that the distance that you have is reading 125, 135-ish. And if you need to and it's not, then you'll adjust and raise up. If you're getting too high of a reading, then you're going to lower it by only 1 or 2 inches. And that's the actual site, or the bulbs if you have an ability to move the bulbs. But say that your bulbs are stationary at the very top, you'd be actually moving the basking site either up or down to accommodate.
That's why I love these dimmable switches that I got, just because you can just twist that thing. Oh, it's reading 155. I just dial it down. All right, it's 130. I'll leave it there. The other one, it's 130. Well, I want a gradient, so I'm going to take it down to 115. And I like having it a little bit away from the surface, so that way it actually provides like a larger platform, so they can, kind of move inwards, get the 135, move out, get 120, so they can have a lot of options.
Nice.
I think there's some. Now, usually I use, about 130 for my basking spots. You can go hotter, and I know people have used it hotter. I don't think it's necessary. But also, when you use a hotter, if you're going to use a hotter basking spot, make sure that there's ambience around there that gradually go out and give you those other temperatures.
Exactly.
Or, a lot of times what people don't understand about the stacks, the Rita stacks, is you'll have 160 on the top, okay? It's not that the animal's necessarily going to use that. You might see them out there every once in a while, but it's because going down in that stack, you're then going to 140, 130, 120, 110. It's all the rows under there that act as a more of a hidden, safer place for that animal to thermoregulate. All right.
Yeah.
It's when we see the pictures of people reading the 160 on the surface that it gets confusing sometimes, because yes, that top board is 160 or higher, but what you're really concerned about, what you're really looking for, is because you want that gradient to drop. So that next level down is a nice 130, 140, where that animal can get to where they need and stay somewhat hidden and use that amount, and then it drops throughout the stack. So I just wanted to, for the listeners out there, to point that out, and something I had to learn myself.
Also burns. So if it's like a thin-skinned monitor, like Kimberly Rocks or Indicus type of monitors, or just, I've seen it burn just any species of monitor, is if you use a bulb super focused or a spot bulb that's really focused, and you have a slightly cooler cage ambiently and the bulb's working really hard, and their animal is really close to it, and you have such a crazy basking hot spot, you're going to get some burns. You'll basically get thermal burns and blisters and things like that that become wounds, and you basically are, not having your lamp and everything like that cued in and set up correctly.
Right.
Yeah. So I myself don't. I used to use like 75 BR30s and 90 watts and stuff like that when I had extremely tall enclosures, like 7 and 8 foot enclosures, or essentially I didn't know how to heat the bottom. So I was using those because they basically heat up an enclosure really well. But now where I live now, in the climate that I have, and also how I have my cages now, which are basically more horizontal than they are tall, I use these lamps called BR30s and BR40s, and they're used by the chameleon community because chameleons like to get up there and burn themselves underneath those basking lamps, and they'll burn their cast and stuff like that and burn their back. So they're a soft white bulb. They're called Duramax Philips. They're just Duramax Philips light bulbs, and they are really useful bulbs for cages that aren't so tall and to limit burns. You can actually have it kind of close to the basking spot, creating a pretty good gradient, but it's not blistering hot like a halogen bulb. So those are the bulbs that I currently use more so than anything else. Oh, now, man, So as
Sorry,
far as
I'm stretching out here in the.
now, as far as you like getting into just other tree monitors and things like that, you have a black tree, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
I don't think she's going to be good for breeding, I will say. Just judging by her demeanor, I don't know. I mean, she's obviously wild caught. She's like 6 years old. She's seems to be one of
you just
those
you're just still
special
looking for a
cats.
male, right?
Kind of. She's a little special though. She requires a little bit extra care. I think she has some neurological issues because her she can't catch her own food.
Oh,
There's a huge delay in her response time. Like if I put food here, like if this is food and this is her, if I move it away, it'd be like that.
Yeah, she's
Like
probably blind, probably too.
there's like a solid second and a half delay on any of her reaction time, and it's really unfortunate. So why I have to hand feed her everything,
yeah.
and she's pretty reluctant to eat. Sometimes she'll go off food for like a week and a half at a time. And so I don't think she's an animal that I'll ever try to breed because I
What
don't
if she
want
just
to.
starts cycling?
Right? No, dude, I know. I would feel terrible if I put that on her and then something happened.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm basically to the point where I'm just like she's pretty much just a pet at this point, and I I would like a pair of black tree monitors. I just don't think she would be a part of it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, that happens, and it's unfortunate sometimes. But I
Hmm.
have a similar animal. Now, in my case, it's a male, so I'm giving him a little more credit than what a female has to do. Um, so we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds very similar
Right.
to.
Yeah, like based on her just her mannerisms alone and like her ability to like navigate her enclosure. If she did manage to cycle eggs, I'm not confident she would even be able to bury them.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
I
that
wouldn't.
type of thing.
You know
So
what's
I
crazy?
don't want to put that on her.
I have so everybody knows Lauren, right?
Yeah.
So Lauren is my extremely blue phase Kai Island monitor that everybody loves. This is
Yeah. This guy right here.
Yeah,
one of my
I'll take her off your hands.
one of my prized animals, right? And so she doesn't have any neurological issues, but she does miss food quite often. So I have a feeling that she's blind. Taking her to the vet, the doctor also kind of didn't see the whole, I guess, pupil looking through clearly, right? And so he says that the bottom part kind of looks, I guess, blurry. And so she misses food, kind of is off cue, and so I have to always hand feed her. I can leave food in a dish; she'll find it without a problem. But I used to think, dang, this female, I don't think she's going to be able to breed and lay or anything like that, right? But man, she did all of it on her own. She's laid 2 clutches so far. Um, all of them. One of them with the male. I didn't really witness any breeding. It was also very short. We're only really like a couple days together. But after being with him, she basically laid a set and then another set after. None of those eggs. They actually went a certain distance, kind of looked good, but after maybe a few months, I cut the eggs and they're like yolky inside, or just
Hmm.
Oh, really?
I don't know what happened. Yeah, so um, now this animal I basically underestimated. So, you may not want to do that just yet because coming down the line, she may lay all of a sudden, and you're taking care of her so well that the animal does go through, and it's got these instincts and senses kind of sensory built into them, right? And so I don't think they lose that when they come across
yeah,
having to go through the process. I I have some pictures and even videos of Lauren laying, and man, it was surprising because I didn't think she'd be able to find the nest pin,
Hmm.
find the hole, how to use it, all the stuff. But she's really cute in. So, man,
Hmm.
I wouldn't say go ahead and breed it, but treat it like if it was normal. And if she does go through the process, then man, I'm all for at
Right.
least carrying her through the
Hey,
process, even if you don't breed it.
I've been surprised before. Sometimes I know I don't give animals enough credit. So with what you're saying, Kai, you know what? Yeah, I've learned that lesson a few times. So, but
Yeah,
ultimately, Cody, it's going to be your decision. If you get
Dude,
her
right? Yeah.
paired up or
No,
not.
it's like my blue tree that I had also. Like I mentioned how well he turned around and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
this dude, I had him for 5 months, and it was just night and day, like the different animal that he had turned into. And then next thing I know, like I woke up for work one morning and he was literally having a seizure on the bottom of his enclosure.
Oh man.
And about an hour later, he died and had a necropsy done. And they were like, yeah, it was neurological. Like physically
Huh.
speaking, this animal was flawless. Like he didn't have any extra fat. He was perfect shape, condition. But yeah, he had neurological issues, so he died from it.
Man.
And yeah, had him 5 months, and he was the biggest freaking tree monitor I've ever seen. This
Yeah.
dude was massive. Like I have a picture of him on my roommate's arm, and he was like just nose to vent, like from his wrist, like up to here.
Yeah.
He was a beast. It sucks still. So that's why I'm actively trying to find a blue tree right now. I'd prefer it not be wild caught, but like I'm hounding everyone that I could find. Like you got babies right now, like I want a blue tree right now. Just
yeah. The
let
demand is
me help
crazy.
you. Let me give you money.
The
Yeah.
demand is crazy, man. It's
Yeah.
just so wild. Yeah, they're. I mean, they still are a good sized monitor, and if you can get them really good and all that stuff like that, and have be rewarding, they're a really good captive. But man, you've seen people that are just having a disaster of a time.
Yeah.
And hard to acclimate. They got them from some poor resource or something like that, and they just
Hmm.
set them up for failure. You know.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
they started off in a bad condition, and it sucks because a lot of people are just like misguided on their like basic info. And so
Yeah.
like I literally saw a picture the other day of a dude that had a adult male blue tree monitor in a 10-gallon tank with cocoa fiber.
Hmm.
The animal can't even turn around.
I
Like,
Yeah.
mean, even a 18 by 3 by 3 is too small.
dude,
Um,
yeah.
and
And it's a shame that people think that's okay.
that's a highly recommended one. And it's not. It's not. It's okay to raise a young one, no problem, and to
Yes.
even house one for a little bit, but to accommodate everything and go through all the life cycle stuff like that, that's what's more.
Yeah, like I would say up until it hits a subadult, that'll be all right. Like if you got a juvenile, the 3 by 3 by 18s, those are whatever. Those are fine, but like as soon as you got like a subadult or an adult, like it should not be in anything less than a 4 by 4 enclosure.
They really, really surprised me. They're the longest monitors I have, even with the sand monitors.
Uh-huh.
Blue trees are pushing probably 3.5 to 4 foot, where I think the sand monitors max that I have right now is maybe 3.5 foot. So they got them beat by a good 6 inches or so, maybe even a little longer by now. But
Right.
they will scale a wall to now. Their enclosures are 5 foot tall. Um, they'll scale up the side of this and clear that whole cage in 2 jumps.
Oh
And
yeah, dude, it's crazy.
yeah,
They
it really
move.
surprised me how fast they can move, and with such accuracy too. If you got stuff
Yeah.
in there,
Yeah, they get going. It's like my what will be my biggest monitor that I have, at least like weight wise, is the torch monitor.
mhm.
She's still very recluse. She's getting better, just slow but
Probably a
sure.
girl.
Yeah, I'm like certain it's a female.
I mean,
Uh,
most of my males are really outgoing. Even wild caught ones. It's the girls that are super timid. Even captive bred ones. They take longer to start. They take longer to come around. Imprinting is a lot more difficult because they don't come around. And yeah,
mhm.
it's a total behavior thing. It's with most monitors too.
Yeah, dude.
Man,
Yeah.
so are you gonna look to to pair that torch monitor up?
I would very much like to.
Now
I
we're
can't
trying
tell you
to.
when it's going to happen. I'm
We're
Yeah.
trying to.
I'm trying to find a male, but
I saw two of them floating around not too long ago. Someone had something
same.
set up.
I'm trying to be picky about the one that I get because I know that there's, even though they're a very already like scarce species.
The one by Hassani. I'm not sure if you know who that is. He's Torch Monitor on Instagram, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's this guy that used to be on Facebook, and he also is a dog breeder as well. But he has the type that you want, basically the very typical black melanistic look with the orange snout and the slight white tinge that comes in the bottom chin.
Nice.
That's the iconic look of the Torch Monitor.
So to give you a little bit more of a idea of what we're talking about here, it's been discovered that there's, I guess, multiple localities of them, and the one locality doesn't darken up as much. So typically, a torch monitor is, as a hatchling, it's going to look almost identical to a quince monitor, like nearly identical. If you know what you're looking for, you could see the color variation, but they get the same patterning, the same ocelli, everything. It's just the tinge of black that they start with is like a different shade. It's kind of weird. But they start off similar.
Dark melanus.
That's
I call them. You want dark melanus?
Yeah, man. But anyways, so as a quince monitor ages, it goes from black with yellow spots to yellow with just some black lines down it. The torch monitor goes from that same pattern, and then it covers up all the yellow and turns to like a full black animal with like an orange face, a little bit of light colored on the chin, like he was saying. The other locality of them doesn't darken up all the way, so it maintains it. It's almost like a washed out
melanus,
like a washed out melanus.
Currently, John and Guy have a couple of those. They're essentially a different island, and they just look a little bit. You can still see very much so the pattern that they grew up with, rather than it disappearing, right? Than some of the other torch monitors. And this is Varanus obar, by the way. It's a part of the Indicus complex, and so just so the beginners kind of know which type of animal we're talking about, what to look up, right?
It's an animal for in my opinion, it's an animal for the monitor geeks out there, because
dude, it really is.
Well, you think about it. Okay, you just described, you can have this really bright yellow animal or this off black, kind of a gray animal. It's like, I want the gray animal for the monitor geeks. And for people just getting into the hobby or looking at stuff, they're like, well, why would you take the gray animal?
Yeah. So that's why I'm like, and so I'm like, it's already like a hard to come by animal. Like, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it the way I want to. Like, I would love to one day breed Eastern indigos. I don't want to breed an Eastern indigo to a Texas indigo or a Gulf Coast indigo. I want to do the one that I want to do. So I want like pure localities. So like I have a Jayapura green tree python. I want to breed it to another Jaya. I want pure localities.
You're getting up there now.
So like I'm trying to do things right, like from the start. Like one of the worst things that you can do, and I see it constantly as like a new keeper, is like, I'm gonna get this, and this, and then go, you know what? I don't want these 4, but I'm gonna keep this one. Like, puts more thought into it at the start, and you'll have so much more success and be happier with where you are, because you're not flipping animals every week and like doing all this crazy stuff, like,
or getting rid of them in a couple months when you've taken on way too much. But I mean, I see people all the time buying a ton of stuff that are all babies, and when it comes to really house them.
You know what? I don't know if I like this.
Right? The animal outgrows them, really.
Yeah, and it's just too bad. And so that's what I'm trying to avoid. Like, I don't want to buy like I have my obor, I don't want to buy a pair and then go, you know what, I want to do this locale and then have to worry about rehoming them and then worrying if they're going to a good home and doing all this extra work. Like, I'm not trying to do all that. Like,
Right.
I just want to do it right from the start.
They're wild, man. I'm not gonna lie. The oboe, I used to have a dark melanus myself. Like it came darker, but it ended up being pretty light. But really, I didn't know what I had. It was just I bought it off of King Snake, and just to realize, man, like, hey, this is a cool looking monitor, right? But it was just another type of Quincy that wasn't so high yellow from the get go. That's what started my. That was my purchase. I've actually helped and raised more Indicus, but that was my own, and probably like 2011 or something like that. I got myself one, and man, they're an awesome species to work with. It's just dealing with that shyness you were mentioning. If you can suck it up, handle that part of that issue, and we're mentioning it earlier. It's called empty cage syndrome, man.
It really is. Yep.
That animal is there. It's going to come out when you're not around. You're going to see a water dish and probably a tail tucked in a tube, but that's all you're going to get,
Yeah.
And unless you have a camera or you can sneak in and you get a good glimpse of it, that's all you're going to get, because it's going to disappear in about a minute when you take your eyes off of it. So,
Right.
Dude, like I swear, like when I first got into this stuff, like it was so crazy thinking about it too. Like, who is uploading these YouTube videos and why do they make everybody want to buy these animals? Like, are they getting paid for this by like the importers? Like I see that's what got me into the Quince monitors was so Eugene, he was one because he had Pazuzu. Yep, that was the name of it. He had Pazuzu, and then there was another one. This dude had a Quince that was in a massive enclosure, and the whole bottom was water. And it would just, I saw this YouTube video where it would just dive off the top of the enclosure into the water and swim out to him. And I'm like, man, I want that. And then I did this Quince, and it hates me.
Yeah.
I'm like, what did I do?
There's a shop nearby that they have I would still say a baby, right? But it's a very young juvenile at this point. And but it is just the most awesome example of a monitor. It's curious, it's out, it's friendly. I know the guys over at the shop have been handling him. It's not flighty, and we're talking maybe like 16 inches, 18 inches, somewhere around there right now. And it is so tempting just because that animal's already showing some promise as far as just being a good captive. Do I need to get that project? No, I don't.
Right, dude, exactly. But you see it and you're like, maybe I do need it.
Right.
That's it's and then you end up with buyer's remorse right away after. That's how it goes. Yeah, dude.
I always think about, man, can I have another 8-foot enclosure? No.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope, sure can't.
Tied up already.
Yeah. Do you guys ever browse Morph Market just to see what's on there?
Dude, I actually get links. People send me links every day, right? Like they're like, hey, look what this idiot is trying to sell.
Don't you, right? Did you ever see the I don't even know who posted it, so I can't even say, but there was a blue tree monitor on Morph Market for $3,500 that was super washed out. And it was like somebody just downloaded the worst photo editing program and then just turned the saturation up to 11.
Oh man,
that was this photo. Like the picture of this blue tree monitor, the background is turning blue because they turned the saturation up so high. $3,500 for a fresh import animal.
Yeah,
dude at a shop in my city bought it. It shows up and he's like, wait, this isn't as bright as the picture.
As the whole thing goes with the blue trees themselves, the high demand, the awesome look, and then importing them is getting harder. Oh, it's gonna go.
And see, here's the worst part of it is I reached out to this dude because he's telling everybody he can't get it to eat. And I'm like, look, man, you just dropped $3,500 on this animal and you can't get it to eat. What's going on?
Yeah.
And he has it in his shop on the sales floor. This animal's scared out of its mind and it won't eat. I'm like, cover the enclosure. I will literally bring you a cup of grasshoppers for free. Just throw them in
Don't
there
kill
when
it.
you close tonight, and just cover the enclosure and let it eat. Like the last thing I want is this thing to die.
Yeah.
You know what he did instead? Put a bowl of fruit in with it. I read online they eat fruit. I don't care what you read online.
Yeah.
Like, and that's, man, it's a horror story. And like, I'm my my nature is I need to buy this animal to save it from this guy, but then I'm just gonna put 3,500 back in his pocket, so I can't do
Right.
it.
No, don't.
Yeah.
I understand that, but you got to fight. I wanted to buy a whole cage full of Nile monitors at a show.
Right.
Why?
$60 a pop, and I'm just looking at them like, oh, just come home with me. I'll find you homes eventually, you know. But
Right. Well, dude, it's like what was it, Kai? Now a year ago, I bought my first grasshoppers off of you, and
Yeah.
dude, listen to this. I started with one cage, and I'm like, you know what? This might be all right. Next thing I know, I have a baker's rack full of freaking grasshopper cages. I'm like, yeah, let's
Most
just
people
take it
don't
over this room.
understand. Yeah, most people don't understand. You know, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna lie. The price is up there because it's new. The demand is crazy, but it also takes a lot to feed and heat those bad boys. You know.
Dude,
Um,
I've had people straight up be like, you know, if you go lower on your price, I'll buy from you. And I'm just like, look, man, do you know how expensive it is going through a $4 thing of organic romaine lettuce per cage per day? Like, I can't lower my price. I'm barely breaking even.
Right.
Like,
but the prolificness, though, getting real down to the numbers off of buying 25 or 50 or how many you ever feel like you want to start with in a couple months with my guidance or Cody's guidance or whoever, you can end up with thousands.
dude,
And
it was
more than
literally
you
the best decision I've ever made was getting into that, because now I'm consistently hatching. Like every 6 weeks, I'm hatching like 1,200 grasshoppers, and that's enough to feed all of my animals and then sell some. And now I'm doubling my breeding group so that I can sell more. And it's like, I have 4 monitor lizards that eat them. I have a mantis that eats it. I have a guy here that buys them for his sugar gliders that eat them.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Gastrophilus prasinna, like the green
Yeah.
keel-bellied lizards. We have 4 of those upstairs. They devour them. Everything eats them. And
the baby
it's
tree
like,
monitors,
the baby tree monitors, literally the first thing that they ever ate was grasshoppers, and the one likes them so much it will eat grasshoppers out of my fingers now.
Dude, it's like farm to table type deal.
Yeah, literally.
But
I love it.
you're the farm and the table too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, literally best choice I ever made was getting into those.
Man. And so, you know, relating back to the tree monitors a little bit, because you know, even though we're on off little tangents, but it's okay though. We actually covered quite a bit. The grasshoppers and helping you acclimate them have been wonders. Sometimes mice don't work, and it's actually not always the brightest thing to do because they'll get hooked on it and only eat mice sometimes, and it's kind of a little heavy if you're just doing rodents on the tree monitors. So the grasshoppers, what it is for me, it's taken out my necessity to need rodents because of the beneficial factors. Don't get me wrong, rodents are good when you need to pump them up a little bit and when you need to go have a female go through the cycling, all that stuff, right? But the grasshoppers, what they've done is they've replaced the protein, and also catching them, you need to chase down the grasshoppers, and so it's a stimulus and it's a healthy food item. They're also much more meat to shell ratio compared to a large dubia. Now, in the wild, even though I know dubias aren't from Indonesia, but most roaches are terrestrial. They're not really arboreal. Not very many species at all. There are a couple species, but still they live in the soil, and so your tree monitors aren't really going to be eating them. And so the kind and shell ratio is quite different compared to some other bugs, and so they'd be used to more katydid, large grasshopper, soft shelled flying insects. And that's what the tree monitors really gravitate to when the grasshoppers are thrown in. For example, not just us here, but the reptile whisperer, Catherine Brown, has acclimated, I think, a couple animals just from their stagnant state where they're not really wanting to eat, not really acclimating well, and they've really just turned around completely because of the usage. And there are quite a few other people that are going through the same thing where they'd love to introduce the grasshoppers to their diet. It's obviously they're seeing it work with other people and their experiences as well. And at the same time, it takes out the necessity to use rodents so much.
Yep. So one thing I want to say too, I don't even know if I told you about this. So I obviously, I vended the Omaha, Nebraska Reptile Expo,
Right.
and all I sold was grasshoppers, and
Congrats on that.
thank you. And I had 3 separate people contact me afterwards to tell me that their animals had not been eating leading up to that, and the one girl said her leopard gecko, of all things, hadn't eaten in 3 weeks. It wasn't taking dubias anymore. It was reluctant to take crickets. She gave it grasshoppers, and it ate every single one of them and was like super interested in everything. It was super lively after, and she was like, "This is the most my animal's eaten in 6 months, just going to grasshoppers." Like, but the way that I can relate it back to tree monitors, actually, I had been, since I got into monitors, I've been like, how can I get grasshoppers? It's not a thing. It's not a thing. The day I put my foot down and I was like, I need grasshoppers, and then I found out Kai was doing it, I was reading field studies on blue tree monitors. There was a guy that did a field study for, I think, 4 weeks, and every observed sighting of blue tree monitors eating in the wild, they were eating grasshoppers. Every single sighting for 4 weeks. And then to take that even further, every single dead animal, every single dead blue tree monitor that they found when they investigated its stomach contents, filled with grasshoppers, nothing else. That was case closed for me. I need them. Because if that's what they're eating 100% in the wild, why would I not do that?
Right. I'll be talking to you again after the show, Kai. I guess I'm doing this again.
It's worth giving a shot. It's just the consistency though. So we've gone over this before. If you got like other things that are kind of their responsibilities of the day and you essentially can't get to them, you'll fail. You'll basically be buying it and you'll end up having taking care of 25, no problem. Taking care of 2,000, that's a problem.
Yeah, if you don't have 15-20 minutes a day minimum to dedicate to them, like it's going to be too much work, and it's not for everyone.
When you have a big collection too, so obviously using them is not a problem, but growing them and accommodating for the space, the usage, and what they eat, the electricity may not be an issue. It's actually feeding those bad boys, because describing them, they're like a locust, and what locusts do, and why grasshoppers were regulated for so long is because of agricultural threat, right? And so they're scared of locusts destroying entire crops.
All
so
farmland,
if you want to relate it to the grasshoppers, basically they need to eat and consume so much. And they're a diurnal bug. They're not a nocturnal one like most crickets and roaches are that we use in the hobby. And even the mealworms and stuff like that come out at nighttime when the lights are out. And so, it's really something that is different with these bugs. They're chasing the sun, eating and devouring whatever their plant is in the wild, and then that's it.
Speaking of them being diurnal, Dean had sent me a study on them showing that because they are diurnal, if you supplement that, like if you provide them with a UV light, you can actually naturally increase their content of calcium and vitamin D3, which then translates to your animal.
Nice.
So like if you got an extra UV light laying around and you got a couple grasshopper cages, throw it on top of them, and you're just going to benefit your animal that much more.
Yeah, and they're already super beneficial.
I was keeping certain things at the house, but just actually in the last 2 days, I decided all monitors and all snakes except for the green tree python are going back over to the or in a rat snake are going back over to the warehouse. So freeing up a little space. Yeah, the idea was the doing super worms possibly, but I think I'm going to do those at the warehouse also. They don't take the same type of care. They're still pretty regular, but not the same type. But yeah,
right. You can leave stuff for super worms in a dish, and you don't have to come back to it for a day or so. You'll be okay, right? But the grasshoppers consume so much, and I recommend you run them to be keeping up with their growth rate and your time of usage, right? To accommodate that. So, let's say, for example, they basically can't be kept at 75, 80 degrees. They actually have to have some type of basking area because they are a diurnal bug. That entails basically says that they need to eat so much more just to keep up with how hot they are, or else they'll just dehydrate. Yeah. So there's a balance. There definitely is.
To give you an idea of how much maintenance they are too, I literally told my girlfriend yesterday that I felt like I was neglecting them because I skipped a day of feeding. Like one day I skipped a feeding and I felt like I was neglecting them.
I actually can't even leave here. Everything that I planned here is based on like about a 4-hour window. So if I'm going to go hang out, I basically got to go back. If I have to go to San Diego, I'm going to hang out for like a couple hours, and I have to basically be back to take care of everything. I mean, Lynn may be able to buffer out a couple hours of the day, but she's also going to be at work herself and doing things like that. So I basically got to tend to them. I have, mind you, I have thousands at a time though. So, I have to keep up with that, or else I fail and I basically don't keep up with my promises for customers. And so that's also a very bad thing. So my momentum needs to be steady rather than me just saying, hey, I want to take care of them when I want to take care of them.
Exactly.
That's not how business works.
Yeah. I even got my girlfriend to start trying to assist with the grasshoppers a little bit, and it's the funniest thing ever because she's terrified of them once they're more than a couple days old. So she tries to feed them now, and she grabs the biggest tongs she could find and throws the food through the sleeves.
Well, honestly, those sleeves are what's gonna help a lot. I
just came out here at the house
before because I couldn't risk them jumping all over the place and getting out. It would just be a proverbial shit show. But
it's like such an easy invention, but like night and day. I went from reconnaissance missions trying to recover 30 of them at a feeding to now like I might have one jump out every 2 weeks. And it's just because it hits my arm and follows me
right
out,
and I drag him out and he ends up on the floor. But other than that, okay, so I used to on days where I have to cup 1,000, right, just say I have to, that's just the typical number on a Monday. I used to lose maybe 20 to 30 because for one, I'll get annoyed and not chase them, but then I'll also waste time chasing the ones that I feel like, I can grab or whatever, so I have to close the cage, right? And then that disturbs them even more. It's like, oh man, it's a headache. So once we started really utilizing the sleeve is functional for the most part, really, really good usage, and getting your arm in there, getting a cup in there, getting lettuce in there, even a handful of lettuce. You can shove a narrow head of lettuce in there. That's the size of the sleeve, and man, it made life so much easier. I can, I mean, it's still a lot of work, but it makes it so much easier though. It takes
now I'm just going there and just flail around, grab a handful, throw them in a cup, and leave. This is about all I do.
Let me be honest about how I'm planning on setting this up. So this is going to be at the house, but I'm going to teach the kids to do it, and this is going to be how they're going to earn their allowances.
It's simple because all they have to do is really just put in lettuce, pull out the old stuff, and in between that, they're just shaking off the thing. Yeah.
Yep.
And then taking that out, throwing that away now, save all that, feed that to your superworm colony so that way it doesn't go to waste. So I haven't started it yet because I don't have the space here yet. So I'm really throwing it into like a compost that I've started, right? But I used to feed the stems to a tortoise as well, but really he can't eat a million stems. So, really like I have to like utilize the waste better.
Yeah.
So, if you can feed them to your superworms, bro, your mealworms, or even your roaches, you'd basically be utilizing any of that and not having waste at all, which is great.
Right.
You get your money's worth for the 2 heads that you'll be buying in lettuce, and every lettuce head,
Yeah.
So.
All right, guys, we're getting actually over 2 hours. I feel like we can keep talking, and I feel like we barely touched on some of the things. Like, well, I guess before we go, Cody, what's you mentioned the torch monitors, but what are your other interests as far as monitors? Any projects you're looking at getting into?
Dude, so I mean, like I said, right now my number one intention is just find blue tree monitors. That's focused, dialed in. I need blue tree monitors. I want to. It's not even necessarily that, like, I say it all the time. I'm not trying to pay my bills with this. I'm trying to fund my hobby. Like, if I can just make my hobby self-sustaining, I literally opened a separate account for anything I make from grasshoppers, so I know I made this much, I can spend this much on a monitor.
Right. Right.
So I'm literally just trying to get another species going. I'm trying to get another species going. If I can get those breeding, use all that money to throw it straight back into another species. I'd like to get blues. I'd like to get a pair of blacks. I would kill to get a tricolor monitor. Absolutely.
Yeah, I saw one the other day. I actually didn't know that those guys, Reptech has a tricolor monitor in their collection.
Dude, yeah. I would kill for one of those, and then
I would suck a toe for that one for sure.
Yeah, dude. But then trying to find a male green tree python. My female's about 5.5 years old, pushing 6 years old. Trying to find a male for her. I got a pair of boas that will be breeding this year. It's an albino to a hypo boa, so trying to make some sun glows. And then really, like, one of my number one projects, I really, like I kind of mentioned it, I really want to get a pair of Eastern indigos.
Yeah.
Just that's up there. Dream species. There's a trend you'll see. Black body, orange face.
Yeah, I get it. I get it, man. I like red animals. Now, the blue trees are great, but I gravitate towards reds and earth tones. And just the first thing I want is red animals. So, like my bredli, red animals, Ackies, red animals. And then it goes into the little variations of red and then earth tones, the yellows and browns and any combination of those. That's where I gravitate to.
I'm just very into arboreal specific also, because not only are they like, I like the leaner looking animals. If it's arboreal, it's going to be leaner. But I also just really like the cool stuff that you can do with their enclosures. That's like one of the big factors for me, is like, how cool can I make this thing? And like, if it's taller, you can do a lot more with it. Yeah.
Have you checked out the pygmy mulgas? Those little
one of my friends just bought a trio of them, actually. They're neat, man. They're really cool.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I like Chesna.
Really? I like the ones that they actually still have those subtle colors, and some of the bands you can still see, and they're goofy, man. They're a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I can't say I would ever own one, but they're really cool. But yeah, we're trying. We actually think, funny enough, so we actually think we have Gastrophilus prasinna eggs right now. We just can't get to them. So she buried them in a. We inserted like one of the things that I like to do with enclosures. I love building enclosures and decking them out. One of the things that I like doing is secured hides. Right. I love doing secured hides, though, where it's like foamed, siliconed into the wall, so it can't be taken out. So it's like one of the best things you can do for a monitor you're trying to acclimate to is like give it something that it knows that you can't get to.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to make that a trend with most of our enclosures. Well, the female gastro took it upon herself to lay eggs in it. So we're trying to like in situ, like just leave the eggs in and see if they hatch. We think she
They
laid them in
might.
a good spot.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we got all of them from one guy. He breeds the coolest stuff. He does like chameleons, geckos,
That's
the
Damon, right?
Gastros. Yeah, Damon Hall. Yeah, 402 Exotics is his
Yeah,
handle.
Damon's a good guy.
I
He
might
is
have to.
so freaking smart too, man. It is crazy. Any question I have, doesn't matter what it is. Like he was just blowing me up this morning about reading UV lights and like getting a UV meter to read like is this
That's
gonna burn my animal and
that's
just stuff
the
like that.
gentleman who got me into focusing more on my UV usage because he uses it for bird spectrum and his chameleon spectrum. Chameleon people are, I would say, leading in UV usage
Oh yeah.
because of their animals are very specific. But birds also themselves, especially exotic birds, even ones that aren't exotic, require good UV. It's basically great for their psychology,
Mhm.
their psyche and
Uh-huh.
everything. So, yeah,
With that said too, I never thought I would be interested in birds. He has a Turaco, it's called. Look
Yeah.
them up. They're the coolest bird species ever. This bird's name is Ding Dong. And it literally is an acrobat. It doesn't even fly half the time. It'll just bounce from one shoulder to another, just all the people in the room.
That's
It's so
awesome.
freaking cool. Man.
You
Yeah,
know, I have a buddy who does some birds, and just watching the steps he goes through,
mm,
the way his head thinks, um, and just figuring out stuff for birds and their habits, and it's actually not that far of a jump from
hmm
reptiles to bird keeping. Well, I say that without any experience, but
Right, yeah.
the way I
It's
see
like
his head
falconry is
work,
basically herpetology,
right? Right. If I could teach a falcon to catch reptiles for me, then that'd be the way to
Yeah,
gonna come. It'll give you half of it.
go.
yeah,
Right.
right. Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah,
Man,
man, that's about what I'm up to. Doing
okay.
that, I play a bunch of video games, I play guitar, I work. That's about it. I really don't do much other than that.
Nice. Hey,
Yeah, man.
I wish I could do more of that sometimes today. I was running just to get on here. I was like, all right, I got to do
Yeah.
this.
Oh, I worked 10 to 6 today. I got home at 6:30 and I'm like, "All right, is it time yet? Okay, I got 2 minutes. I'll sit down and play a game quick."
Right.
Yeah, so before I just to give you a kind of an idea, before I got into the reptile stuff, I was a part of a fairly decent sized gaming channel on YouTube. I had about 550,000 subscribers.
Woo.
So that's what I did for like 5 years actually was upload to YouTube. So like I'm very familiar with the whole spectrum. It's just a different audience now.
I have to ask, what was the last game you did that for?
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty? Okay.
Yep.
If I'm being honest, I don't play a lot of games, but you sound and look really familiar, but I couldn't place it.
Oh no, you wouldn't know me from that. Like I never really did I guess like live cam or anything like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, it was a like Call of Duty like sniping team. Like it was just like montages and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, for those that might know listening, it was Obey. They have like 600,000 subscribers now.
Oh man.
But yeah, that's what I
Jeez.
did for years, man. So that got me into video editing. That got me into like it taught me a lot about marketing, honestly. And now I work for an internet provider selling internet.
Nice.
So
Yeah. Nice. It's funny what brings people together. I seriously, if we could just get people together, and I really wanted they're talking about that monitor fest next
oh,
year.
dude, yeah,
You
I'm like
know,
5 hours away from that. I'm going
yeah,
hands down.
I think I'm gonna be flying in for the day and leaving the next morning or the night.
Yeah, you got grasshoppers.
Yeah.
You gotta go feed.
I got stuff to take care of, and I also don't like leaving because most of my stuff is always breeding. So it's
Right.
like I'm already stressed about it here. If I leave and I basically can't tend to it, I don't even want to be there because I'll just be
Right,
worried.
dude. If I'm in like social interaction for too long, like I get anxious. I hate being
Yeah,
like
that's another thing too. So I gotta be accommodated, man. I just gotta be
right,
there.
like there's times where I'm like I'll have friends like offer to pick me up and take me somewhere, and I'm just like, no, because I want to leave when I'm ready to leave. Like I don't want to leave on your time. Like hell
We'll
no, man.
I'll talk to Mike and maybe we can have a timeout zone because I have a
Dude, right?
feeling a lot of reptile people are the same way. We'll just have a quiet room with maybe some monitors in there, and everybody
Yeah,
like take your ticket and you can go in there for a little
yeah,
while.
dude, yeah, that'd be funny.
Just gotta have a chair to accommodate my back.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, dude, look at this chair. I mean, you probably saw it earlier. This is
Yeah.
a secret labs chair. This isn't
No,
a
I
putt or
almost got
anything. Look at
that.
this thing, dude.
I
I
totally
love
looks
it.
almost got a
awesome.
chair like that, but I ended up getting one with the little spider webs in the back, which I still like though.
Oh yeah, yeah. This thing cost me a pretty penny, like $450, but
Woo!
That's not
it's
bad.
comfy, man. It is so
Yeah.
comfy. And
Folks,
I sit in this thing for 8 hours a day, so like,
right. Folks got to see where that grasshopper money can get you, right? Guys?
right, dude,
Yeah, man.
Do you want a chair like this?
right.
Yeah, but
I'm
all right,
joking.
man. Well, it was really great having you on, and I really appreciate you coming and letting people know about your experience with Prassinus and other things, and the grasshopper stuff, and the torch monitors, and yeah, man.
Where can people find you?
Oh yeah. So my Instagram right now. Let me pull it up just to double check. I don't
I
even
do
know
the
my own
same
username.
thing.
It's at Riser. It's RYZRR. I post a lot of Okay, I'm really bad about posting on there, to be honest. A lot of what I do post is just reptile related stuff. You know, I post some like guitar stuff, things like that, but that's where I post a lot of my reptile stuff. My Twitter is the same exact thing. I post on there even less.
Yeah.
So probably just the Instagram.
What is this? I see. So I just followed you like right now as you're seeing. I see a carpet python.
Yeah, dude. So that guy is let me figure out which picture you're looking at. How far back is it?
Looks like a male jungle.
Yeah, how far back are you?
Oh, I don't know. I just start scrolling down and
Oh,
checking
okay,
everything
yeah.
out.
So I don't have that one anymore. This proves how rarely I post. I need to post photos of this thing. I have a I'll post it in the actual chat here as I see we got one of those. Um oh, if I'm even able to.
Oh, I see
I
what you
have
mean. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, dude. So I posted some grasshopper stuff. I posted the apes hatching. But I have a crazy looking jungle carpet right now, and she's
Oh, Cody, we
man.
lost. There you are.
Oh,
Lost you
okay.
for a quick second.
There was a flash, and then you.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I don't know if you have a way that I could send it to you, but anyways, I
you can
have
post it on your Instagram.
I sure could. I'll do that right after this. They're photos that I took literally last summer, and I thought I posted, and apparently I didn't. But yeah, so I mean, long story short, I have a carpet python that is an unknown origin. It looks like a jungle possible jag diamond cross. It is the craziest looking jungle carpet python I've ever seen.
Yeah,
And somebody traded it into the local aquatic shop reptile store here as a ball python for
nice.
$20.
Awesome.
And so my
Yeah.
friend hit me up and was like, "Hey man, you want to come buy this really cool looking carpet python?" And I'm like, "I sure do."
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'll have to post it in a little bit here, but craziest
Yeah.
looking snake I
I'll
own
be
for
looking
sure.
for it. All right,
Yeah,
and
man.
Kai, tell us again, where can we find you?
Oh man, don't come looking for me. I'm I'm just kidding. Okay, so I'm actually on Facebook much more often than anything, but because you can just easily find me on there, and I'm much more responsive. But there's quite a few avenues for you to find me now. On Instagram, I am big_lizard 103, and on YouTube, I'm Mangrove Mecca, Mangrove MECCA. I also have California Grasshoppers. That's where you'll be able to find me for grasshopper deets and things like that. I typically post when I have availabilities, and so you can possibly pre-order or have to order right around the time of delivery and such like that. But yeah, you can find me also through this NPR network now as well, where you'll be able to find a whole ton of different podcasts as well, all reptile related stuff. There's even like a field herping one and things like that. And so, yeah, those are places you'll be able to find me. But Facebook, Kai Fan would be the best way where I'm most responsive.
Yeah, that's the same for me as probably Facebook. I also forgot I made a business page on Facebook. It's versatile/reptile. It's a picture of my green tree monitors, and otherwise
Nice.
just my name on Facebook. It's Codey, Codey. Yeah, and
stuff.
yeah, man. I'm pretty responsive to messages on there. That's half of what I do at work is message on Facebook, trying to sell people internet. So
Yeah. For me, it's Origins with an S _reptile on Instagram, and Origins Reptile on Facebook. You should be able to find me on either one. Don't try to follow me by my name. I
Follow
probably
him.
won't. I won't confirm it or whatever. And it's no offense to anybody out there. If we haven't really like talked in person a few times, then I'm posting pictures of my kids and family stuff on.
Yeah, some people need that privacy and
Yeah.
separation, and that's perfectly good. Because, to be honest, I have no separation at all. So
Same.
all right, people can just message me whenever, and I'm always on Facebook anyways on my own page. But if I were to disable it, go onto my other page and things like that. So
I'm not
it's
trying
like,
to follow 20 social medias. I'm bad with 3 enough as it is. You saw my
yeah,
Instagram.
exactly. And I'm only doing it because of the reach for people. It's not sticking with Facebook alone. You don't reach the younger people that are on Instagram or things like
Right.
that. And so I mean, in those, it's 1,000% free. Why wouldn't you use it?
Yep.
Yeah. So
all right, guys.
We appreciate everybody for coming and listening.
Yeah,
and enjoying this podcast.
Again, some of you have messaged me some things, some questions. Sorry if I haven't gotten back to you. It's been a little bit busy, and with the growth of not only I think the podcast, but just what's going on in the collections and other thing, it gets a little hard. And my wife and family are super supportive. I am not going to piss them off to answer some more questions. I need them in my corner.
We will have another Q&A because the questions are sort of not piling up, but they are coming. We love the feedback that you guys have been giving us. I know most of them have been really beneficial or just great words and things like that. But anything that you guys have questions about, stuff that we may not have covered, feel free to message us or contact us any way you feel like you'd want to, and we'll try to get your questions up. Even possibly even have you come on if you want to be in the hot seat a little bit and ask us questions about things that are pertaining to your subject and species. We're going to get, as we come and figuring out more of our goals and things like that with this current podcast, we'll be covering more and more species. And so if you notice, we've just dropped the roughneck one, and we'll be dropping this one in a couple weeks. And we did the Savannah one. I've covered mangroves. We're going to do more dwarf monitors. But if there's a species that we we're not really working with, or something like that, like Spinellos, stuff like that, species that are here in the United States but very rare. You don't really see a ton of them, and most people aren't working with them too well, or hard to figure out. And so, feel free to send us questions.
All right. And again, guys, go check out MorelliPythonRadio.com. There's a Patreon. There's a store. If you'd like to help support not only MPR, but the rest of the Reptile podcast, go ahead and look at that Patreon. See if you'd like to subscribe. Check out USARK. That's USARK. They are out there on the front lines defending our right, or protecting our right, to even keep these animals in the first place. So anything you can do to support them, please do, because there are a lot of, I'll just say a lot of other people out there that want to actually affect or take away your ability to keep animals. So they've been fighting for us for a while. They probably before many of us were even keepers. They have a long history and credibility to what they do, and they're not novices. And we're talking about some of the best and smartest people in this hobby protecting our rights out there. So definitely get on there, support USARK, check out the store on NPR and the Patreon. We really appreciate you guys for listening. All right.